Welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard Charity Streamathon. I'm your host, Kev. You can follow me on Twitter at dynasty_goat. And with me on the start of this stream, we've got Matt, who you can follow on Twitter at MattFFDynasty. Matt, we're just over halfway through the stream. How are you holding up?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. I think I've got my second win now. I was struggling a little bit after the first quarter, but I feel like I'm coming on strong now in this second half, and yeah, I'm looking forward to carrying on.
We've got a cheeky comment already from one of our hype men. Best Ball UK NFL says trilogies are always the best. So maybe this will be the best stream out of the four. We'll have to see how it goes.
Some tough competition. I think we've had a good first couple of innings. So yeah, it's going to be good.
Indeed, we have had amazing guests so far. We've got another half, I guess, of amazing guests as well. The guests we've got on in this time sort of running a few minutes behind. So we'll take it as it comes. We might have to freestyle a bit, Matt, but
that's fine.
We've got enough dynasty.
We can edit all this out. What's that like?
Good stuff. So we've also got our co-host Ali, who you can follow at FF Dynasty Grill. A little bit jumping on in a couple of hours' time, I believe, at 8 o'clock UK, 3 p.m. US.
I don't know how you two have finessed this as well, getting two hour slots off each, and I've only got the odd hour here and there. Some of them don't add up here. Honestly,
it's terrible. Can't get the staff. But yeah, in terms of the stream today, we're doing it for a fantastic cause. Obviously, we're doing 16 hours. We're doing 4 streams covering all 32 NFL teams from a dynasty perspective. But the main thing about today is raising funds for a fantastic charity in Mind. And Mind is a charity that's specialising in providing advice and support to empower anyone experiencing a mental health problem. The campaign to improve services, raise awareness and promote understanding surrounding mental health. And every year, 1 in 4 of us will experience a mental health problem. But hundreds of thousands of people are still out there struggling. So we're just looking to do our bit to help this fantastic charity out. We want to support the charity, which is extremely relevant in the recent global pandemic and the increased focus on supporting vulnerable people to facilitate improvement within their mental health. So we'd be delighted if you are able to provide a donation and support our charity streamathon. And to do this, we've got the link at the bottom. We've got our link tree on our Twitter page at Fantasy Wildcard. It's justgiving.com/fundraising/Fantasy Wildcard. So thank you for your support so far. We're just a little bit off as target. Your donation could push us over the edge. So I really appreciate it if you have donated or if you can donate as well. So big thank you so far. So yeah, we're on stream 3. We're in the third quarter, just after half time in NFL terms. And over the next 4 hours, we'll be discussing the NFC and AFC North teams from a dynasty fantasy perspective. We're going to kick off NFC South. We've got the Saints and the Panthers. We'll kick off with the Saints, I guess. And you're going to fire out the first question, which I will do my best to answer, Matt.
Yeah, so the Saints obviously got a really interesting situation when we're talking about the quarterback situation. They've got obviously Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill as well. So I was just wanting to know what your feelings were in regards to Jameis Winston, if he is the starter week 1. What do you think his ceiling could be in 2021? And if he is the starter, can he keep that job all season?
I mean, in terms of that offense, I think I don't think one guy's going to play a full 16. I think it's likely going to be a split. We know how much Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill, first of all, so he's going to get playing within the game plan each game, whether he be the starter or not, which does take a little bit away from guys like Kamara and like Winston. I guess in terms of dynasty, Winston still like him. He's going at the QB 28 in round 8, so you're getting him as a QB 3, and I think that's a fantastic spot to be taking him actually, because if he's your QB 2, you don't know if he's going to lose his job. You don't know how he's going to perform each week. We've seen him in the past when he was at the Bucs. He had that season where he threw 30 touchdowns and 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. So he's highly volatile, but yeah, you're getting him as a QB3. I think he's fine to take a punt on at that stage in the draft. I know he came up on our stream earlier about a guy like him or Fitzpatrick. I think Fitzpatrick gives you that certainty short term, but I can see the argument the other way that Winston gives you more long term, because let's say it doesn't pan out for him with the Saints and he ends up going to a different team. I think he's got that caliber where he's going to get another shot in the NFL. He was the number 1 draft pick. He's got that pedigree, I guess. He's going to get more chances within the NFL. But I do feel that Taysom Hill is going to be niggling away, and it wouldn't surprise me if he did make starts in the season. How about yourself on this, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting subject, because I think a lot of people they know what Jameis Winston did in Tampa Bay, and I feel like a lot of people are expecting that kind of productivity. And to be honest, I can't see it turning out that way. I mean, he's on an offense where Peyton, I can't see him being happy to have a guy that's going to throw 50 interceptions every season. So I think he is on kind of a short leash when it comes to the Saints. They're a team that we know that they're in a position to win now. They've got great offensive weapons, great defensive weapons. So they're going to be a team that's always around the playoffs. And with that, you need a solid quarterback. We've seen what Drew Brees has done. Arguably a Hall of Fame, is one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in the NFL. So going from that to Jameis Winston, I wouldn't be expecting the Winston that we saw in the Buccaneers. And then, as you said, Peyton's obviously he's high on Taysom Hill for whatever reason that is. But I do think with that, he's now got a short leash on Winston. From a fantasy perspective, in regards to the offensive players on the Saints, I think we're all hoping that it is Winston, and hopefully he gets the job for the full season. But yeah, it's all going to boil down to, I think, if he can cut out those interceptions, he's going to need to be a little more safe with the ball, a bit more of a game manager than what we've seen in the past. But yeah, if he can do that, then I think he's going to be great for fantasy. Just maybe not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I don't see him being like he was in Tampa, the QB4 in 2019. Yeah. I can't see that in his range of outcomes, despite having arguably as good weapons as they did then. I mean, Godwin Evans are fantastic, and you think about the ancillary pieces, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, they're two of the finest at their positions in the NFL. So I wouldn't be expecting QB4, but if he miraculously does fend off Taysom Hill all season, I can see him being at worst a wild card QB2 player, which
I like it. Wild card.
Exactly. Like it. It's going to win you some weeks with how he does play. So,
and then it's the ADP as well, QB 28. I mean, I think he's going to outproduce that. I think it's going to be better than QB 28. It's that longevity of how long he can stay in the Saints that's probably pushing down his value. Because if we knew he was going to be the starter and we were confident he could hold that starting job, it'd be going an awful lot higher than QB 28.
Exactly, and what you've got to think as well, what a lot of dynasty players, they just think about him on this contract on this team. If he does leave the Saints, he's going to get a job elsewhere. So QB 28 is a value for me. Yeah,
there's always going to be teams into that need a quarterback, and there's plenty that you'd say are in shaky situations at the minute. So yeah, I fully agree with that.
We've agreed. Get in. So we'll see if we can agree on this next guy. Alvin Kamara, the star running back for the Saints. Obviously, the offense is changing a little bit, losing Drew Brees, who retired. I want to get your thoughts on Kamara's pass usage within this offense. With a new QB, whether that be Winston, whether that be Taysom Hill. We're not 100% sure yet how that will pan out, but in terms of pass game usage, how do you think it'll differ with the new QB? And can he be a top 3 running back in Dynasty just on a seasonal basis, I guess?
Again, it's interesting with these two quarterbacks. I've just mentioned if it's Taysom Hill, we've seen that. We saw a little sample of that last year. It's not something that was enjoyable as a guy that's got a Kamara in a lot of places. So my hope is obviously that Winston is that starting quarterback. But then again, he's a different quarterback than what Drew Brees was. I think the reason why Kamara was used so much in the receiving game is because Drew Brees is not a guy that can get out of the pocket and run it. So even if he's not his designed target, he was getting those dump-off balls from Drew Brees, whereas someone like Jameis Winston, while he's not a Lamar Jackson, but he's definitely a guy that can run the ball. And We've seen it in fantasy that he can add yards rushing. But with Kamara, he's obviously been one of the top passing options with the Saints. Last year, he had over 100 targets again, 756 yards. So he's one of the best receiving running backs in the league. I'm just praying it's not Taysom Hill, Kev. As I say, we've seen that sample size. It wasn't pretty at all. But again, Jameis Winston, I think he's the quarterback that we want. And then I do think with Jameis at quarterback, he can be a top 3 running back just because of, as I say, his efficiency when it comes to both running the ball and receiving it. People obviously talk a lot about his receiving work, but he's a damn good runner as well. It's just they don't need to run him into the ground. He's a guy that can have 11 carries, but he can easily turn those 11 carries into 60 yards, which is fantastic. Yeah,
and with Kamara, he's got the ADP of running back 5 going in the early round 2. He's going around guys like Dalvin Cook, around DeAndre Swift. I think upside-wise, if everything hits for him with this offense, he can be the running back 1. We saw on Christmas Day how he can blow up in one spot. He actually won me a dynasty league. Thank you, Alvin. And now I can't sell him in that league. Nobody wants to buy him.
Yeah.
Everybody's wise that he's a 25-year-old running back that's in a new system, a new QB, which could potentially affect him. So I think we like him, but it's going to be hard to sell him and try and get a DeAndre Swift, I think, back.
Yeah, but when we talk about his ADP RB5, I mean, it's not bad, I don't think. I mean, we all want that shiny new toy. We all want these young running backs, but we've seen what Kamara can do. He's in a role as well where he's probably got a bit of a longevity. We all talk about the age cliff, but when you're talking about Kamara, I think he does have that little bit longer just because of how he's used in as a running back with the Saints. So I'm not too out on him. I'm still happy to draft him. I mean, if he's going to fall in drafts, then yeah, I'm more than happy to grab him.
We've got a cheeky comment from actually our next guest, Rich. Spoiler alert! Nice little shout out to him there. He just said that you're looking like you've just come off a shoot on Vogue, Matt.
Vogue.
Yeah, he's saying you're looking good on today's stream. So apologies for anybody listening on listening to this on podcast.
As I say every time you say these things, as I say, it's more Giacomo, I think, than anything else. But I'll take the compliment, Rich. Thank you. just wait till it's 1 a.m. and my hair's all over. I'm laid back. I'll not be looking as fresh as a first.
Definitely, indeed. So we all love Kamara. He's a model himself, isn't he? I guess. So yeah. We'll move on to the wide receiver car now, and I'll let you fire off your first question on them.
Yeah, it's an interesting wide receiver. Obviously, we talk about Michael Thomas, but then beyond that, there's very little there. So Treycon Swift is a name that's getting brought up a lot. I know when we had Ali on as a guest, actually, it's a guy that he highlighted as a potential buy low heading into.
We laughed at him. We
did. Yeah, we all thought that with the capital that they had and the needs that they've got, they don't really have many needs. So I was convinced that they'd grab a day 2 wide receiver or at least a day 3 wide receiver, but when we managed to get through that draft untouched, and as I say, it looks like being the wide receiver 2 on this offense. So Kev, I'm just interested to know, would it be someone you're looking to acquire cheap now that we know he's got that potential of seeing plenty of opportunity? And then obviously Jameis Winston as well at quarterback, that could be another thing that boosts his chances of a productive season.
You know what? I'm going to be a bit stubborn here and say that I'm still not interested. I mean, he's avoided all the landmines, hasn't he?
Yeah.
We were certain that he would actually not be a starter, but it looks likely he is, and very easily could be the wide receiver 2 on that offense. I mean, if you look at that depth chart, there's Marcus Callaway, there's little Jordan Humphrey, Deontay Harris. I mean, the only guy they added from the draft I can remember is an undrafted guy, Kawaan Baker from South Alabama. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's in prime position to be on the field a lot. And just imagine if we get old Jameis that's slinging it about all over the place. Yeah, it could have some value. And wide receiver 75, I mean, round 17. You can throw worse stats, I guess, than an upside play like that.
Yeah, I think that's what's drawing me in. I think when it comes to Smith, it's just like that ADP. He's not a guy that I'm excited to get, but when you're talking about round 17 in your startup drafts, it's right at the end as well. We've got it 17.12, so 18th round basically. I think he's a guy that he's got that opportunity. So yeah, I'm more than happy to throw a dart and hope that he can blow up. With Jameis Winston, we've seen I think when Jameis played one game last season, I think Treycon Swift had one massive reception. So if that's just a small insight to what we could potentially see, then I mean, I'm happy to take a chance, even if it is just a flex play, desperation flex play. I think that's at that point in your draft, I'm happy to grab him there. Definitely,
indeed. So before we move on to our next wide receiver, our guest has arrived. He's part of the FF Face-Off. It's Anthony Savino, who you can follow at The Real NFL Guru. Good afternoon, Anthony. How are you?
What's going on, guys? Can you see me?
Can't see you. We can hear you.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, I have a little bit of a family emergency. My stepdad's in the ICU at the hospital, so I had to just step out to, I didn't want to leave you guys hanging or anything,
No, we appreciate you coming on, and obviously there's more to life than fantasy football, so we do appreciate that these things happen.
No, absolutely. Definitely. Happy to be here, though. It's just a great cause,
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that, Anthony. I know yourself at the Fantasy Football Face-Off, you do your own mental health streamathon as well, which I'm sure we'll touch on before you go today, but it's a similar cause that we're doing today, and just thanks for jumping on board, especially in a situation like this where we really appreciate your time, and we're just halfway through the Saints, so we'll fire the next question at you. Actually, it's about Michael Thomas. Obviously, he's a stud Saints wide receiver. I just want to get your thoughts on if you think he'll ever have a top 5 wide receiver season in his career again, and where do you have him in your current dynasty rankings? Bearing in mind his ADP is currently wide receiver 8 in the 4th round.
Yeah, I was never a big Michael Thomas guy. I always thought he was a product of heavy volume in that Saints offense with Drew Brees. And I know Thomas didn't really skip a beat with Teddy Bridgewater, but last season there was a lot, whether it was Thomas off the field, injuries, there was a lot of issues. And for me to be taking a wide receiver that high, I need a better quarterback situation. I need a little bit more stability. And I also need to know that the player, like taking Allen Robinson, no matter who the quarterback is, Allen Robinson is going to produce something. And if I'm taking a receiver that high, I think at this point, I'd rather have Allen Robinson than Michael Thomas.
We love that because we're massive Allen Robinson fans on this show. I mean, Robinson's going quite a bit later than Michael Thomas as well, so you're getting the discount, or if you're in existing leagues, you're getting a bit back on top. You might get Allen Robinson and, I don't know, maybe a second or third if you're moving off of Michael Thomas. So do love that shout. Cheers for that shout. We do love Allen Robinson a lot.
Yeah, I think with Michael Thomas, we've got the ADP of wide receiver 8, but I don't know about you, Kev, but a lot of startups I've seen him go a lot later than that, and I think there's potential to maybe buy the dip a little bit with Michael Thomas. I mean, we've seen what he can do. If we're going to get Jameis Winston, then I think that's a positive. It might not be what he had with Drew Brees, but I still think he can return value. Wide receiver 8, I think he's going to be a wide receiver 1, probably more a low end one. But as I say, I've seen him go a lot later than wide receiver 8, so there's potential to get value, I think, with Thomas.
Yeah, I guess with Thomas as well, just coming back to the top 5 season, what do you think his ceiling is now in Dynasty? Just thinking about on a season-to-season basis, Anthony.
In Dynasty, like for what you have to pay for Allen, for Michael Thomas at his ADP, again, I'd rather go get a running back and then draft another receiver later, or guys around Michael Thomas. Like, give me the DeAndre Hopkins. I just don't have the trust there, even when it was Drew Brees. And maybe I'm soured because of what happened last year, because I had Michael Thomas in the Scott Fish Bowl. I had Michael Thomas in a lot of spots, and he really just did not come through. So maybe I'm a little bit soured too, but he just never really passed the eye test for me like some of these other elite receivers.
Yeah. I think there's that added thing as well that it appears to be a little bit of a diva. I mean, when it comes to fantasy football, that they're the kind of guys that if I've got a choice between him and then somebody, as you say, like DeAndre Hopkins, I think that could potentially be the tiebreaker between those guys.
And what if it's not Jameis Winston?
Exactly. Yeah. We've just been saying how it'd be a killer, I think, for anybody on this Saints offense. If it's Taysom Hill, then good luck with that one.
I was just smiling to myself, and then I had that the reality that I have got Michael Thomas in a league where I'm a big contender, so I do need to move on from him. I think if we get Robinson in a bit, that'd be a good idea. If anybody's listening that's in that league, hit me up. And right, we'll move on to the tight end position. There's a guy here that's pretty sexy name in the industry at the moment. There's a lot of hype around him, but maybe it's not fully reflected in his ADP yet.
Yeah, we briefly mentioned him a few times already in this streamathon when talking about the tight ends, and that's Adam Troutman. It appears that he's going to be the starter for the Saints. Obviously, Jared Cook, he's moved on to the LA Chargers. So, Anthony, I was just wondering, do you think we could potentially see that breakout from Troutman in 2021?
Again, it does depend on the quarterback. Now, if it is Jameis Winston, Winston does have a history throwing to the tight ends over at Tampa Bay with Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard during his tenure there. But Troutman is relatively, we don't know what he is. We don't know who he is. No more Jared Cook. They also moved on from Hill, who was more or less he would be using a red zone every once in a while, but more of the blocking tight end in that offense. So they obviously see something in Adam Troutman. But as far as if we're talking in redraft, he's not draftable.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's just that the unknown, I think, with Troutman. But then his ADP tight ends 19 is in that wasteland that we keep mentioning when talking about the tight ends. And I think he's probably one of the guys that if I was going to pick one of those between tight ends 16 through to the later guys, he's probably a guy I think that could potentially break into that tight end one range. But as we've said, to be a tight end one, you don't have to be much. So yeah, it's an interesting dynasty stash, but as you say, redraft, I'm probably a little hesitant on.
Yeah, dynasty, I don't mind taking a shot because it's not going to cost you a lot because of the ADP. But I'm just thinking off the top of my head in the underdog best ball drafts that I do, like Zach Ertz, I'm getting him in round 16 of 18. So for a redraft or best ball, give me the known commodity. Give me the guy who's probably going to be traded and be more utilized. He's been a top 5 tight end for the bulk of his career. I'd rather have that guy who's going right around or later than Adam Troutman, at least on the short term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're a dynasty team that's in a win now mode, which effectively is redraft, you can't really have Troutman as your tight end one. I think, like we've said, the upside is there. He's only in his second year in the NFL, which generally you don't see tight ends peak till year 3 and beyond. I think dynasty-wise, tight end 19, it's a fair price. I probably will have some of him there. I know me and you, Matt, we took him in one of our recent Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty leagues that we're a co-owner of. But yeah, it's one of those really. It depends on your roster build. Who your tight end one is, if you've got a top one or one that's an older guy, and trying to get that blend really of older guys, younger guys, players that can perform now, players that can perform in the future. But yeah, if Taysom Hill becomes a QB, that's going to be it's going to be Kendall Hinton level production.
Yeah, I think we've said it about every section we've spoke about the Saints. A lot of it is going to boil down to the quarterback play, because a lot of us we're definitely not on that Taysom Hill train. So hopefully it's Winston.
Indeed. So we'll now move on to the second team as part of this hour slot with Anthony, and we're going to talk about the Panthers.
Yeah, so we'll start again with the quarterback again, a new quarterback coming in for the Panthers after they recently traded for Sam Darnold. And in 2020, Teddy Bridgewater was a starter and he finished as the QB 19. So I think there's definitely potential for whoever was the quarterback on this team. It was even better, I believe, the first half of the season. I think Teddy was a low-end QB 1. So Anthony, I was just wondering your feelings on Darnold, and do you think he can outproduce what Bridgewater did and that QB 19 finish?
We've only really seen Sam Darnold play well in a short period of time. And sure, he had injuries. He had Adam Gase. He had mono. He was seeing ghosts. There was a lot of factors and why Sam Darnold didn't work. I think for the Panthers, I think they made the wrong move. They should have gotten a Justin Fields in the draft. They should have went and gotten one of these quarterbacks. They didn't pay a lot for Sam Darnold, but he's just as much of an unknown as Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater, we knew what Teddy Bridgewater was. And I don't know why fantasy Twitter especially, they were all in on Teddy Bridgewater last year. His career high currently, touchdown passes he set last year, 15, going in was 14. He's just not that quarterback, and then you put him on a team with a bad defense and trailing, and the rest is history why Teddy Bridgewater is now in Denver. I think Teddy can thrive with the top-end defense like he did with the Saints and the Vikings. But for Sam Darnold, you're giving him weapons. You're giving him better coaching. I think the offensive line should be better. But how much am I really going to expect out of a guy who's never really done it before? If he finishes as a top 10, 20 quarterback, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think from a real life point of view, I hate the move, to be honest. I don't see how he's an upgrade on Teddy Bridgewater. And they gave him his 5th-year option, I guess, after the draft. Yes. So they could have easily just sat there, see how the draft went, took Fields, and then said to Darnold, actually, we're going to decline your option. See you later. I was just thinking as well with Darnold, I think his start to the NFL, it'd make a fantastic film, wouldn't it? With, you mentioned the mono and seeing ghosts and getting traded from the big city in New York, and then now this with the Panthers, and it's an exciting offense. He's got the weapons, but is he going to be better than QB 19 next season? Probably not.
Yeah, I think it's the offense that's the draw. I think that's what I know. Me and you, Kev, we were both quite like Teddy Bridgewater going into last season because of the weapons that he's got. We're going to talk about the weapons obviously a little bit more later on, but guys like McCaffrey, DJ Moore, these are all guys that can make yards after the catch. So we don't need Donald to be anything special. He can make the short passes and let these running backs and wide receivers do all the work for him and get those fantasy points for him. So I think that's why I like this offense. We just mentioned the defense not being strong either. It's quite a young defense. So all that put together, it makes it an interesting situation. It's just we need to see what Darnold is. As you say, we don't know what he is yet. A lot of us have got hopes that he is everything he was advertised to be when he got drafted. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I like the situation and the weapons that he has at the very least.
I think as well, he's going at the QB 26, which do you know what? If you're taking him as your QB3 and you've got two really solid starters that you're going to start every week, two QB1s as such, I think you can throw a dart on somebody like him because there is that unknown potential in this offense. I don't think he had the best weapons with the Jets, the O-line, the coaching. It is a lot better situation. I just feel that if he happens to be a QB2 or you've maybe not got a solid QB core and he's going to be making a lot of starts, it's a high risk move to be making in dynasty leagues. So we will now move on to another guy who's potentially a high risk guy, depending on your thoughts of the injury that he had last season. The consensus dynasty running back 1, Christian McCaffrey. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on McCaffrey and where you're comfortable taking him in your dynasty startups. Do you think Darnold helps or hurts his fantasy production as well, Anthony?
I don't know if Sam Darnold's really going to make a difference. Just like Teddy Bridgewater, I don't think he's really going to make a difference to a Christian McCaffrey. If anything, if there's garbage time, and that is something Sam Darnold, contrary to Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold's used to playing from behind, so there's going to be checkdowns in Christian McCaffrey's future. He's still my number 1 overall pick in redraft and in dynasty. Yes, he had the injuries last year, but if we really look at it, it seemed like there was a lot more injuries last year, and that's because there was no offseason. So guys who normally are durable, they were getting hurt. And for McCaffrey, I believe they were 2 separate injuries. He had the one initially, and I believe it was the shoulder towards the end of the year. If this team was better, do I believe McCaffrey would have been on the field in December? Probably. But they weren't playing for anything. Why put all of these unnecessary touches on Christian McCaffrey? He's not a rookie or a second-year guy. He's an established running back. So yeah, I'm all in on Christian McCaffrey bouncing back and playing like the guy he played like in 2019 and before.
No, I think I fully agree with you. We spoke about it a little earlier when we spoke about Saquon Barkley. I still think that McCaffrey is that standout RB1. We've seen it with his rushing ability, his receiving ability, and this offense as a whole. Again, it's going to be an offense that's chasing teams down when they fall behind early on. So all of that, it just plays into a great situation for a running back.
I mean, look what Mike Davis did last year.
Exactly, yeah.
Mike Davis wasn't Christian McCaffrey, but he was a solid RB2 for most of the games or most of the fantasy weeks.
Yeah. That's a great point as well. Before you jump in, Kev, I was just interested to know, Anthony, what's your feelings on Chuba Hubbard? Obviously, he's now going to be that running back behind McCaffrey. Do you think he has a role for the Panthers?
I like Chuba Hubbard a lot. I think he has that great straight line speed. He's a nice change of pace back, but I don't really have a reason to believe that this isn't going to be the same old Christian McCaffrey workload that we're used to seeing. Even last year when McCaffrey was out, it was all Mike Davis. They sprinkled in other guys here and there, but not enough. And I think that's going to be the same thing with Chuba Hubbard. Hubbard could essentially be another Tony Pollard, a guy who, when he gets touches, you're going to say, why doesn't he get more? Well, because the starter in front of him.
Yeah. No, I think with McCaffrey, like we've said, he's the dynasty running back one. He's going at the 103 in dynasty startups. Hey, we can see you now, Anthony. Love it. I was just saying, I'd have had more pause actually on if he's still the running back one, if he'd have missed all season, if we had no record of how he looked with Matt Rule as the new head coach. But we saw them 3 games, the 2 at the start and then 1 in week 9. And he had 28.5 points, he had 24.8 points, he had 37.1 points. So there's no concern for me with regards to the usage in the offense. Injury-wise, everybody gets injured. Running back's a position where you're going to get injured, and he is a smaller guy. It's the first injury of his career as well, so there's no concerns with me there. The only thing that I do have a little bit of pause about is going at the 103 in dynasty startups. I think that with the QB runs I've been seeing in dynasty startups, if you take McCaffrey at the 103, I worry about your QB1 at the back of the second. Is there any concerns for you, Anthony, if you was in a startup and your QB1 was a guy like, I don't know, a Matt Stafford, a Baker Mayfield type?
Is it rephrase the question? So it flex, right?
Yeah, so super flex wise.
Super flex wise, yes, I'd be very, very concerned if I waited on quarterback. And Christian McCaffrey, let's say I go running back again. And if you're waiting until the 3rd round in a super flex, a lot of times you are going to be left with like maybe a Matthew Stafford and a Baker Mayfield, or last year it would have been like a Jimmy Garoppolo. So depending on I guess what's there in the 2nd round. If I had the 101, I get Christian McCaffrey, and then coming back, I'm going to take the best quarterback available, because I at least in a super flex, I want one elite quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I think for anybody taking McCaffrey, you've got to be double hitting quarterback on the way back. I think unless it's out of that first sort of 10, 12 players, if they've all gone, then you're probably best sort of zagging and going for a tight end maybe at the start of the 3rd, just so you've got an advantage at a position where you're going to be behind at QB. Yeah. Right, Matt, why don't you fire us a wide receiver question? We're all McCaffrey'd out.
Yeah, we'll move on to the wide receivers, and it's DJ Moore that I thought we could chat a bit about. to be honest, it feels like a constant disappointment with a wide receiver 23 and then wide receiver 16 finish, just purely down to all the hype that seems to be around him every year. But we're talking about a wide receiver that's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. So to me, it's a bit of a shock that we're going to label him as a disappointment. But it just, in terms, as I say, with that hype that tends to be around him, especially from a dynasty point of view, it just seems to be a bit of a letdown. So Anthony, I was just wondering, do you think he can take that step forward and become that a wide receiver one that we believe he can be?
DJ Moore, this is like the third offseason now. We're waiting for this guy to really pop. And it was Cam Newton, Teddy Bridgewater. Now it's Sam Darnold. So we're going to be relying on another quarterback. And Cam's done it before, but at that juncture, when he got DJ Moore, this is, the not the greatest Cam Newton. He was a little bit banged up, and we know what Teddy did last year. And now it's Sam Darnold. I can't trust DJ Moore to be anything more than he's been right now. What I do like is that last year with Teddy Bridgewater, Bridgewater was able to facilitate 3 wide receivers to total over 1,000 yards. And for Curtis Samuel, he's no longer there, but he had the rushing yards and the receiving yards to get him over 1,000. And then also DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. So yes, there could be extremely productive pass catchers and supporting cast, and the quarterback isn't necessarily a quarterback one. But as far as what I believe DJ Moore is or what he can be, I don't think the quarterback's there to get him into that wide receiver 1 tier, especially this year when there's a lot of guys we can make a case to be a wide receiver 1. Like this wide receiver class in 2021, this is deep. When you take in consideration CD Lamb, T. Higgins, Justin Jefferson last year, and look at Jamar Chase and all these receivers coming out this year, and then there's the DK Metcalfs of the world, and DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams. We talked about Michael Thomas. Cortland Sutton didn't play last year. He was on IR for 15 games. He has that receiver 1 upside. So no, DJ Moore, I think there's way too much competition.
Yeah, to be honest, I like DJ Moore as a player, but for fantasy, it just doesn't excite me. I can't see him being like a top 6 wide receiver ever. And that's despite him giving back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's only 24, and he came into the NFL young. He has performed real life as such, but for fantasy, I mean, it just doesn't get it going for me. I don't think he's actually been used correctly in the previous seasons. I think he needs to be a high-volume slot receiver like Michael Thomas was for the Saints. I mean, last season, Teddy Bridgewater did a fantastic job. He had three wide receivers in the top 25. It's just a little bit disappointing that if DJ Moore's as amazing as he is, how come he's putting up similar numbers to Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel? I mean, he's in year 3 now. He's heading into year 4. I love the guy. I love the talent.
That's it. Yeah. That was exactly what I was going to say. For all he is as a great yards after the catch receiver and somebody that can make those yards, it's the touchdowns that's holding him back. He's had 10 touchdowns in 3 years in the NFL. I mean, that you're never going to get a wide receiver one out of somebody that's putting up those touchdowns. You just got to look at the guys that are in that wide receiver 1 bracket, and they're all guys that are used a lot in the red zone or getting those touchdowns. It's just funny how you mentioned all those names, Anthony. Everyone seems to say, "Oh, I think he's got a shot of being a wide receiver 1." There's about 30 guys that people have mentioned that could be a wide receiver 1, and DJ Moore for me is not one of those guys.
If it didn't happen last year, because Christian McCaffrey is a guy we know can get 15, 16 touchdowns in his sleep. And we can use that. Well, that's why DJ Moore isn't doing it. Well, last year there was no Christian McCaffrey. DJ Moore still didn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know we have.
Now McCaffrey's coming back. No, they're all on him.
Yeah, you're bang on there. And just the last thing on DJ Moore, his ADP wide receiver 16 in round 6. I don't know about you, but he doesn't go wide receiver 16. Not in the leagues I'm in anyway. He goes way before because people get excited about what he's doing on the field. They watch Red Zone too much. I mean, fantasy is all about numbers and fantasy points. He's just not done it yet, has he? His best season's wide receiver 16, I think. So, yeah, Not a more fan. A more fan, but not a more fan for fantasy.
I'll probably take Cortland Sutton over DJ Moore right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with that.
You can see Cortland Sutton having a season where he gets double digits and like 90 catches, 1,500 yards.
And then there's touchdowns. He's the guy that's going to get used in the red zone. So yeah, as we just mentioned, it's the touchdowns for me that holds more back, and I can't see that change. Everyone's going to say this is the year because obviously Curtis Samuel leaving, but they've got a rookie wide receiver coming in, and that was a nice tee up for the next question. But as well, McCaffrey, as you said, Anthony, there's nothing for me that stands out that it's going to make this the year for DJ Moore.
Yeah, you give it a little tease then, Matt, and it got me going, actually. We're going to talk about Terrace Marshall now, Anthony. I just want to get your take on this season, the wide receiver 2 spot. It's a battle between, in my eyes, Terrace Marshall and Robbie Anderson. I don't think David Moore's anything special to get involved in that competition. So who do you think will be the wide receiver 2 this season and beyond, and where does Terrace Marshall sit in your rookie ranks? He's currently the rookie ADP of wide receiver 6 going at the 204. I think he might have gone. He might not like Terrace Marshall, I guess. Do you want to? You start, Matt. I'll
jump in because I know if I let you do it, Kev, you'll run away with this one. So, I think it's definitely an interesting fit for me with Marshall. We've just said about Curtis Samuel leaving. I think that now opens up an opportunity for Terrace Marshall. I think Robbie Anderson's he's going to get his still, and then obviously DJ Moore just spoke about is a yard after the catch monster. So he's always going to get those yards, whether it's from a high volume play. That's what we will hope. But then in regards to Marshall, he's a guy that I'm not as high on as you, but I think it's hard to find anybody that's probably as high on Marshall as you. But as I say, the landing spot's great. I think he's got a great shot at being that wide receiver 3 in this offense, and then potential to step up into that wide receiver 2 role when Robbie Anderson leaves. In regards to my rankings, I ain't got him on me at the moment. But off the top of my head, I think is he around about 6? I think I've got him. You probably know better than what I do, Kev.
You've got him 7.
7. I weren't too far off, but 7. I think that's fair. I think you're going to get him mid second. I've got him mid second in a couple of my rookie startups, and I think that's great value in all honesty.
I'm definitely higher than consensus because you and Ali are both analysts. I've got
the disrespect of putting the air quotations.
No, you've both got him wide receiver 7. I've got him wide receiver 3. So it is likely that he's somewhere in the middle. I love Terrace Marshall. I think he's fantastic. I think he was behind 2 future stars at LSU in Jefferson and Chase, who are already top 10 wide receivers in Dynasty in the NFL. I'll just quickly speak about Robbie Anderson before we bring Anthony back in. Robbie Anderson, before Marshall went to the Panthers, I thought he'd sneaky upside again to beat DJ Moore in fantasy points, just based on the fact that he was used in the slot. He was reuniting with Sam Darnold, who was a QB at the Jets. And Robbie Anderson was a top 24 wide receiver with Sam Darnold, who stunk up the place for the Jets. So Robbie Anderson's going to be good this season, but I think beyond that, get on the terrace. What's your thoughts on Terrace Marshall, Anthony? Do you like him? He's going at the wide receiver 42 in startups. He's the rookie wide receiver 6 in rookie drafts.
I think Terrace Marshall, I think you summed it up right. He's potentially going to leapfrog Robbie Anderson. And I think the only thing holding the leapfrog back is the pre-existing rapport with Robbie Anderson and Sam Darnold. But if Terrace Marshall ultimately, because we know what Robbie Anderson can do, real skinny, lanky frame, has a little bit of speed, more of a deep threat guy. Terrace Marshall could do everything. I think he's built for this offense, and it's only a matter of time. But just like last year when we saw 3 productive receivers, it would not shock me one bit if it was a similar outcome, because really there's still no tight end position in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, get on the terrace for me. Just get him everywhere you can. He's going to be a star, and if he's not, then I'll probably have to delete Twitter, I think. So I wonder if they can have 3 top 25 wide receivers again. Obviously, McCaffrey's coming back, but yeah, if Terrace Marshall's top 25 as a rookie, I'm going to be unbearable.
I think it's going to be tough, though. I mean, we at the start, we were just saying what we feel about Sam Darnold. I mean, can we really expect McCaffrey to get all that workload and then to provide 3 fantasy wide receivers? I think it's going to be really tough for Sam Darnold to do that.
Indeed. And now we'll come on and talk about the tight end spot. It's not the sexiest. There's a few interesting names in there. I think you're probably high on this tight end cover than most, aren't you, Matt?
No, I'll be honest. It's always tough when we get to this part of a lot of these teams because we just know the shocking state of the tight end situation. But yeah, the Panthers, they did draft a tight end in Tommy Tremble in the 3rd round, so it surprised me, to be honest, that they grabbed him that early. But in regards to that, it's then Dan Arnold. I know, Kev, you're super high on Dan Arnold.
Oh no, he's crap.
And Ian Thomas. So we've just lost Anthony again, the connection. Yeah. But Kev, I'll throw it to you. Who do you want to own? I know it's a shame because I was hoping that maybe Anthony could have said Dan Arnold. I know you're not, but is there any of these guys that you wouldn't mind taking a shot on in Dynasty?
I mean, yeah, just give some context first. There's Tommy Tremble who's going as a tight end 35. He's going in round 21 of drafts. And then Dan Arnold and Ian Thomas have got no ADP. So they're going to be on waivers. They're going to be free. I do worry about tight end. Obviously, they've got all these amazing weapons in this offense. The free wide receivers, Super Terrace, Marshall, get on the terrace. McCaffrey's coming back as well. He's going to be the highest tight end running back in the league. We're yet to see Matt Rule use the tight end. I mean, last year, Ian Thomas was meant to be the man. It was a popular guy as a breakout candidate. I actually thought it would be a solid breakout. He's got fantastic metrics and he did flash previously. I think a lot was made over where he was drafted. He was taken at the 401. And the reason the 401 is always an interesting spot is because it's the start of day 3 where teams have got they've got that time the day before to sort of plan any trades, see who's top of the board and trade up. And the Panthers actually stuck and took him at the 401, which it gave that bit of hope, and he has flashed a little bit. But Matt Rule didn't really use a tight end last season. I know I had a cheeky punt on Ian Thomas for 2 touchdowns in week 1. I'd have won a fortune, but I think he got like 1 target or 1 catch. It was not the best, shall we say, but. Yeah, I'm not going to say Dan Arnold. If I had to pick anyone,
I didn't think you would.
I'd just say, save your fab. Don't bother drafting a Panthers tight end. There might be one that breaks out that when they do, they're on waivers, so they can get them there. Yeah,
no, I think I agree. We've just mentioned it a little bit when we're talking about the 3 wide receivers. If we need Dan Arnold, I want to say Dan Arnold. We need Sam Darnold to be Patrick Mahomes. I think to get all of these guys fantasy relevant. So yeah, when it comes to the tight ends, I'm not too keen on any. If I'm going to take a shot, Kev, you're not going to like it, but it's probably Dan Arnold. I think he's the one he's shown the most out of these 3 guys. So if I'm going to put my hopes on any, it's that. I think Tommy Tremble, I believe it was more of like a blocking tight end. I think he's utilised a lot more as a blocking tight end. And when you've got somebody like McCaffrey, that's a key piece that you need, really, a tight end that can block and potentially open up some holes for McCaffrey. So yeah, it's never a sexy conversation, is it, when we talk about tight ends for a lot of these teams. So Dan Arnold, that'll be my one, but I'm not keen on any.
It's just really interesting because obviously Darnold, he had a fantastic season with Chris Herndon when Chris Herndon was a rookie. He had I don't know if it was 50 catches or 50 targets, but he was a guy with very little draft capital that had a decent rapport with Sam Darnold. I just think it's his system. That's why it was worrying me as well. There was talk of Kyle Pitts potentially being available at their pick earlier on in the offseason, like thinking maybe February, March time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was worried if Pitts would have gone here just because there's no track record of Matt Rule using the tight end in the NFL. It's only 1 season. It could be that Ian Thomas is a scrub that isn't worth anything really. But Yeah, it's one of those you got to wait and see. You got to avoid the tight end for me for the Panthers and just hopefully someone breaks out. Just not Dan Arnold. Just had to get one more shot in there quickly.
I'll be honest. You make it out as if I'm in love with Dan Arnold, but I'm definitely not. He's just somebody that is there. He can catch a ball at least, so that's the only advantage he's got. But not a sexy position at all when it comes to the Panthers.
And I know I've said it before, but if anybody's watching the stream or a replay of the stream, Matt knows what's coming. He does look like Dan Arnold.
I look nothing like Dan Arnold.
Honestly, we'll yeah, he does. He does. You do. You're Dan Arnold's doppelganger.
I look nothing like him.
So unfortunately, we lost Anthony. We lost Anthony's connection there. But just so you're all aware, you can follow him on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. It's part of FF Face Off, and like we touched upon at the start, the Fantasy Football Face Off do a mental health podathon. It's running this year on Friday the 9th of July. Yeah. So like this stream, it's for a fantastic cause, mental health. It's to do with the Hayden Hurst Foundation. So please check that out in July. It's for a great cause, and obviously mental health's a massive factor in society nowadays. So please do get behind it and support this streamathon and support the mental health podathon in July as well. So that brings us to the end of the Saints and the Panthers. We've got a couple more teams in the NFC South, and we'll actually be taking a bit of a trip down memory lane for the next hour or so. For all you long-standing followers of the show, we had a very eccentric and interesting co-host when we started out. I'm sure you know him on Twitter. He does change his name every other week, it seems. I'm not sure what it is at the moment. It's maybe something to do with Tim Tebow being Jesus or something like that. But he's part of the Leeds United Ultras. That's a soccer team for anybody in the USA. But we want to give a warm Fantasy Wildcard welcome to our former host and legend, Rich, who you can follow on Twitter at FFMiz.
Hello.
Good evening.
We've got the band back together.
We have indeed. It's good to be back. Matt, you are looking beautiful.
Mate, I appreciate the kind words, but I completely disagree. And as I say, just give me another couple of hours. I'm going to be laid back. My back's already in bits, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out later on. But I can assure you, I'm going to look nothing like this in a few hours.
I should say I've got some coffee for this long hour stint that I'm on. I'm flagging already. I was on the sat.
This is the longest you've been on a podcast in months, Rich.
I'm in retirement. Kev forced me to retire. I was sacked for gross misconduct.
No comment. No, it's fantastic to have you back on, Rich. Obviously, you're rocking the Jags jersey. It's a shame because the Jags are actually part of the next stream. I'm sure you'll be tuning into that with. Well, you actually said that you was the warm-up act for the next two guests we've got on after you.
I am indeed. I'm going to stick around to fanboy Josh Larkey and then leave. One of my heroes. So I'm glad it's someone that loves LaVisca Chenault as much as I do that's covering the Jag. So I love that. So definitely watching that one.
I'm sure he was hoping he could have a bit of a better warm-up pack than you, Rich, but we have to make do with what we've got.
Beggars can't be choosers, can
they? No, we appreciate you jumping on. So we might as well crack straight on. We're going to be covering the NFC South and the Buccaneers and the Falcons. So we'll kick things off with the Buccaneers and Kev. Do you want to kick things off?
Indeed. This is very exciting. I'm
getting a job interview.
getting emotional thinking about.
Do you want me to leave so you two can rekindle
we can reminisce.
Childhood memories. This
is just going to be like his group chat. Me just sat here while you two chat to each other.
Yeah. For anybody that don't know, me and Rich actually went to school together. We were really good friends in school, actually, weren't we, Rich?
Yeah. I'll use that.
Are you friends now? I didn't even realise you were friends now.
Honestly, I thought you were going to say no. So I'm very impressed with that. But yeah, we'll crack on with the books. We'll be professional now for about 10 seconds. So it's just about the QB position. We'll kick off with Tom Brady. Some eyes, he's the GOAT. He's actually swung me, to be honest, on last season's performance. I was fading him, saying he's system QB, and Belichick's made him. He's rubbish. He's going to get found out. But he landed in a great spot with the Bucs. He's got, again, a fantastic system, but he's done it with another team. He won the Super Bowl, and he stood out again in fantasy. He was a top 10 QB. So just want to get your thoughts on Tom Brady. How much has he got left in him? And can he be a top 10 QB again in 2021? And to give a bit of context, he's currently going as a QB 23 in dynasty startups.
So I think I'm similar to you, Kev, to be honest, is that I have to admit, rightly or wrongly, I think I was very bitter towards Tom Brady because he plays in the same conference for us as the Jags. Not that we're ever contending with the teams like the Patriots. So I was a doubter of Tom Brady, and he made us all look like idiots last year. I thought it was fantastic. And in terms of how long he's got left, I think he signed a new contract in March, and I think he's extended through the 2022 season now. And I'd say I fully expect him to see that out. Because he's always talked about playing beyond 45 years old. And I think this new contract set him up to do that. So I think his contract does run until 2022. I thought when he signed for the Bucs, maybe he'll, if he wins a Super Bowl in his first year, he's proved everything that he needed. So people asked, can he do it without Bill Belichick? Well, he's proved it. And I thought maybe he'll walk away, but I don't see any sign of that, to be honest. I think even if he goes back to back and wins the Super Bowl again this year, I still think he'll play in 2022. So I think he's got plenty left. And in terms of being a QB1, I expect him to return QB1 numbers again this year. I mean, you look back to last season, he had no off-season to prepare, going to a brand new offense after 20 years in the NFL. And then if we think back to the start of the season, there was people talking about the Bucs offense struggling. And that Brady didn't look the same, and there was issues between Brady and Bruce Arians, and I think he was still a top 12 early in the season. I think it was two or three times in the first month of the season. I think he was still a QB1. In fact, it was 3 of the first 4 weeks he was a QB1, and that's with people saying the guy was struggling. So second year going into that offense, I expect him to be just as good, if not better. And I think his ADP, I think it's around. Did you say QB 23, Kev? Something like
605. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's more than fine. I think that's a steal, to be honest. If you're going into a startup and thinking that you want to contend out of the gate, which is very unlike me, so I can't relate to that, because I just rip my teams down straight away. But for anyone that plays Dynasty properly and tries to win, if you're thinking 2 or 3 years ahead, then Brady's going to play the next 2 years maybe, and you see the guys that are going maybe just behind him. So you've got guys like Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold. I could sit in and put money on the fact. I think Brady will be a starting quarterback in the NFL longer than any of those guys. So
I like that.
If he's 43 years old.
Don't just come in here, Rich, and start bad-mouthing my quarterback like that. But no, I fully agree with you. I know, Kev, you're probably excited to talk about Brady because you've just grabbed him in a startup that all 3 of us are in.
You took him as the QB2, though.
QB3 when it Kev you got him at, so it would have been my QB2. That shows what the strategy I took on in this league. It was not my usual strategy, and I was fully convinced that you guys had let him fall to me, but obviously I underestimated your two. Well, Kev's ability, Rich, you're a bit more questionable. You're a bit more of a loose cannon, so I can never predict what you're going to do. But yeah, Tom Brady, I think he's going to be fine wherever he's playing. We keep saying about, as you mentioned, Rich, that if he won the Super Bowl, could he walk away? Well, he's won it, and he's not walking away. So I think we've run out of excuses for him to leave. He's just going to keep playing until when he wants to finish, and it looks like he's still got that hunger every time you see him on the field. He is the GOAT for me, and in fairness, he's been the GOAT for me for a while. I'm not like you two old boys. I'm a bit more newer to the NFL, and Brady was probably one of the reasons that drew me into it, and he was arguably one of my favourite players because of just the dominance that he has. So, yeah, fully on board with Tom Brady and Kev. Yeah. I want to say an expletive, but I'll not. Yeah, I'm just a little bit annoyed that he took him on in that league.
I think the nice thing as well, like when we mentioned Daniel Jones, is that in 2022, Daniel Jones can watch Tom Brady on the big screen at Chick-fil-A.
Just you wait, Rich.
Chick-fil-A. Quality. No, I mean, Brady, I've come full circle. I hated him, to be honest. The amount of cheating he did as well were disgusting. But if we're just thinking about fantasy, just to go back a little bit, actually, I took him as my QB3, but I think it ties in nicely. I had Trey Lance as my QB2, and I think that if you're taking Lance early in your startups, Brady's an ideal guy to pair with him because Brady's going to be starting 16 games, 17 games even. So, yeah, if you're taking a guy in a startup like a Fields or a Lance, he is an ideal guy you should be prioritising and targeting because I think he will be a QB1. Just thinking about Brady as well, he's won 7 Super Bowls now. He's got a 2-year contract. Imagine if he gets to the end of his contract and he's on 9. I think he'll go for 10, I think he'll go for 10.
He's just going to play forever, isn't he? I think that's
how old would he be going into that? So if he won it 2021, 2022, so he'd play 23.
Yeah. He's 43 now, so...
I can see him do it. I think you're right. Will he stop at 9? I don't know.
And then just the last thing about Brady, just to wrap up, because he is the GOAT, but we've spoken about it for a while now. Just the fact that when he goes to a team, people buy in and every player's willing to take a discount in pay to play with him. And I think
him as well, that's the thing. He always, the way he did it in New England as well is that he was never one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, really, on the average per year and things like that. So you can't deny that he does everything for the team as well. And that, like you said, the team buy into that as well. And that's why they're bringing back I think every starter or just about every starter. I'm convinced that they could go back to back, to be honest. I mean, my dark horse is Dallas, but I'm not backing against the Bucs overall, to be honest.
Quick last question then. Super Bowl, would you take... they're not actually the favourites, the Bucs, second favourites behind the Chiefs. Who would you have for the Super Bowl?
If that was the Super Bowl again?
Just who you think will win it this season?
I think the Bucs will win it again. I have backed Dallas, like I said, because the Bucs weren't worth backing.
Me too.
Yeah.
You convinced me.
Well, my text.
No, that's a private chat.
Someone worth backing is probably Dallas, but I can't see past the Bucs again, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree.
We're gonna talk about one of your favourite players of all time now, Rich.
I feel like it was a trap, but you just did this on purpose.
Yeah, so we're talking about guys that have just re-signed, and Lennon Fournette, he's coming back. He had that impressive run in the playoffs, and he arguably looked like the best running back on the Buccaneers. Sorry, Kev. I know you don't like that. But yeah, Rich, I'm interested to know, do you think he can take that jump and become the lead back in Tampa, or do you just think, again, it's going to be one of those ugly running back by committees and a backfield you're just going to avoid in fantasy?
No, he just stinks. That's all it is. No, I do think, to be fair, what I'll say is I can't deny that he looked really good in the playoffs, but rather than it just looking at how Leonard Fournette played, I think it's dangerous to elevate players based on like a small sample size. So I don't think he will be the lead back. I think we'll see a running back by committee again from the Bucs in 2021. I think they've added to the muddiness by signing Gio Bernard as well, who's obviously specialises as a pass catcher. So one thing working in Fournette's favour is possible. I think Gio is only signed like a very cheap deal. I think it's less than $1.5 million for the season. So it's not like they've committed a lot to him. But I still think it's too muddy the situation's too muddy to be able to say, yeah, you take Fournette at a point where you're expecting him to be the lead back in that offense. I don't have that sort of confidence. And if we're looking at dynasty, obviously Fournette's only got a contract for this year as well, as far as I remember. So I just think it's a mess. You just don't know where Leonard Fournette's going to end up next year. And I think he'll be going to his 5th year in the NFL as well. So in the playoffs, he actually showed, as he did with the Jags, to be fair, in the first year or two, or even maybe 2-3 years, even though he wasn't very efficient, he showed that he could handle the role of being a lead back in the offense. But I just don't think that's the way that the Bucs will play, to be honest. And to give him some credit, you look at the splits in the game he played without Ronald Jones last year. Again, it did show that he can take on that role. I think he had 18.5. He played 2 games where Rojo didn't play, and he had 18.5 PPR points per game. He had about roughly the same targets, I think 4 targets versus 3.9, but he had a big jump in the rushing attempts. Obviously, I think he had 11.5 rushing attempts in comparison to 7.4. But that, again, that's a small sample size like the playoffs. So the long way around of answering it is that I think he showed that he could be the lead back, but I just don't trust that Bruce Arians will give him that role, to be honest. And then you also think about going forward 2022, one of our favourite running backs to laugh at, Kev, back in the British Baller days was Keyshawn Vaughn. John Bauer made him his RB1. But I think that the only running back that's contracted to the Bucs for 2022 is Keyshawn Vaughn. So there's even a possibility that the Bucs try and see what they've got in Vaughn this year. So that makes it like a 4-headed mess of a backfield. I think I'm just not touching them, any of them, to be honest.
Yeah, you made some fantastic points there, Rich. Well done on that. I guess with Fournette, playoff Lenny, if he'd played like that all season, had the opportunity, he would have been the running back 4. But like you said, at small sample size, it's dangerous. We know that Fournette, he's had some issues with your former team. Motivation, you do wonder, you do worry. He did nothing in the regular season, and then when they get to playoffs, he turns it on. So we know he's got the talent, but it's just if that attitude's there, can he be bothered this season? Is he happy with the Super Bowl ring? And just where he's going in your startups, he's going as running back 28. Now, I think after that first 20, possibly 22 running backs, it's very dangerous territory for me for them next 10, 15, 20 running backs potentially. There's guys there that are in timeshares or that have not got a lot of job security or they're old. So I expect I won't be getting a lot of Lennon Fournette, and the places I have got him, I couldn't sell him for a bag of crisps.
I think I might be interested, like looking at those splits that he had with Ronald Jones, though, and he was productive when he was given that lead role. I'd happily probably take him as my 3rd or 4th running back in redraft or even in best ball if you can get him cheap enough. I don't know what his ADP is, to be fair, but where you're not committed to him beyond this season, I think he could come in as your RB3 or RB4 and be effective if you land the right weeks. So maybe best ball more than redraft. It's just dynasty. It's just too muddy. You don't know where he's going to be next year. He might even, quit the league. You just don't know. He's so unpredictable, like you said. His attitude the last season or so with us was horrific. So, so you just don't know with him, and he did turn it on in the playoffs. So dynasty, I'm out on him, but redraft or best ball, I'll probably have a little bit of him this year, I think.
Well, go on, Matt. I'll let you wrap up.
I couldn't add too much to what Richard said, to be honest. I do think it is going to be a bit of an ugly committee. And with that ADP, he's probably a guy I'm not going to be getting any shares of. He has that potential to see an increase in value if anything were to happen to Ronald Jones. As Richard just said, he's shown that he can handle that workload. We know he can be used as a pass catcher. I know he got that tag that he was actually a good receiving back. He's not. He's just he's just able to catch the ball, and I mean that counts apparently as being a pass catching running back. But he does have that where he can do both phases of the game. And interceptions are pointing it in PPR. So yeah, I could definitely see an increase in value, but just with his current value is a guy I'm not going to have, and he's not worth taking a shot on for me.
Just going to say as well, there's a 50-50 coin flip chance that next season, 2022, that Leonard Fournette is working alongside Daniel Jones at Chick-fil-A. Anyway, speaking of coin flips, an interesting wide receiver question. It actually makes me chuckle that you'll be answering this, Rich, because
I'm sure this is set up to say what in the last minute. All these questions seem designed to trap me.
I know. Obviously, we've played fantasy for years, and we've spoke about these two wide receivers in particular quite a lot: Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Godwin's going wide receiver 15 and Evans at wide receiver 18 in dynasty startups. So I just want to know your thoughts on a contending dynasty team. So this is potentially a redraft question, but we'll go for dynasty year one as such. Who have you got out of those guys at the current cost? Godwin wide receiver 15, Evans wide receiver 18.
So we've joked before about Mike Evans, and like we do look quite stupid really when he's put together 7 straight 1,000. But it's still Godwin for me. But rather than being negative and bash Mike Evans, I'm going to just talk about why Chris Godwin rather than why not Mike Evans. I think Godwin's ADP of wide receiver 15 is criminal. This is a guy who we were talking about as early as 12 months ago as potentially the dynasty wide receiver 1. People were talking about him as a top tier dynasty wide receiver. He took a huge hit in value then because of an injury hit 2020 season. But you think about how many the issues he had with injuries throughout 2020. He was either missing games or he was in games limited. There was still worries about the hand injury he had. But you think about, even despite all of that and despite concerns about there being too many mouths to feed in Tampa Bay, which, by the way, I hate, is the worst. Amongst all the horrific things on fantasy Twitter, too many mouths to feed is one of the worst ones.
And it's not even close.
Yeah, it's not even close. Yeah. It is close, actually. There's quite a few on that. Send tweet. But if you play 16 games, stop. He was on pace 16 games, hit 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, and that's talking about there were so many mouths to feed there. So I looked like comparing him to some of the top tier wide receivers, and everyone talks about, for example, how great. And this isn't bashing AJ Brown, by the way. Again, it's more talking about how good Chris Godwin is, but AJ Brown is becoming the consensus dynasty wide receiver 1. But you look over the last 2 years, Godwin versus Brown. Godwin's had more yards per game, more receptions and more targets than AJ Brown. And that's not a slight on him at all, but I think that just shows how good Chris Godwin is when he's on the field and when he's healthy. Even on teams, even on most teams where I go into the startup trying to tank the first year, I'm still
productive struggle.
unproductive wrestle. I'm still taking Chris Godwin because I think people forget that he's only 25 years old. I think with a full season, if he stays healthy, I think his value is going to shoot back up. I don't think he'll ever make it back into that top tier of dynasty wide receivers with guys where people have got AJ Brown and Justin Jefferson, guys like that, but they're pretty much unattainable now. But I certainly think he's going to shoot back up in value this year. So even if I've got a rebuilding team, I'm still holding Chris Godwin because I don't think his value will be lower than it is right now for quite some time. I think he'll jump well inside the top 12, top 10 dynasty wide receivers. I do like Mike Evans as well. A little bit. I've come around a little bit on him, but he's 2 years older than Godwin, and I just see Godwin ascending to the wide receiver 1 in that offense with a fully healthy season. So it's Godwin, whether you're a contending team or a rebuilding team.
Fair, yeah.
All of my points are fair. Mike Evans will be in Chick-fil-A with.
The only thing I was going to add is that I think you're spot on. I think Godwin, his value is now taking a dip, and now is probably the ideal time to buy him. I personally agree. I don't think this is probably the cheapest you're going to get him in a long time. I think he can take a step forward from that last season. And as you said, he struggled with injuries a little bit last year, and that's something that's always tough to try and get back on track when he was already underperforming. We'll say he was struggling a little bit, and then with the injury on top, I think it made it hard for him to bounce back. And Mike Evans, he stepped into that role as that red zone threat, and that's why he always seems to do well in fantasy. As you said, the 1,000-yard seasons year after year, but then it's the targets as well in the red zone that Mike Evans gets. That's what for me makes him quite an interesting target. And just going off the current values, I think I'd rather take a shot on Mike Evans a little later. If I'm a contending team, but in regards of dynasty and the longevity, I think you've got to favour Godwin over Mike Evans.
Yeah, I think as well, if you're a contending team in dynasty, I know the ADPs. we'll edit that out. I think if you're a contender in dynasty, Mike Evans, his ADP is around after him in a startup, but you try and get Godwin in a league. It feels like he's unattainable in a lot of places. Mike Evans, he's readily available, I find, just because he's past 27, he's past that age apex as such.
He's dead.
Exactly. So I think I'd be happy with either of these in a contending team. which I don't have too many of. But yeah, I was just going to ask you, Rich, about Godwin. He's on that 1 year deal. Would you actually prefer for him to stay in Tampa with Tom, or would you prefer for him to move on to another team and be a true fully blown alpha, getting 140 targets for his? I
like how we now call him Tom. We like him so much that we
first name terms.
We hated him 2 years ago. It depends. Like I really was excited for Godwin this year with Tom Brady because I didn't think that Antonio Brown would come back. So that's a little bit of a blow to Godwin. I don't necessarily mind him with Brady, though. I think last year, before obviously he got hurt with injuries and things like that, I said that Godwin would be perfect to play like the Julian Edelman role for Tom Brady, and I still think that's possible. And I still think that could come to fruition this year. So I don't mind him staying there with Brady, but I think Chris Godwin's one of those guys that we talk a lot about when wide receivers change teams, the production either craters or drops significantly. I think DeAndre Hopkins was like an outlier to that, but Godwin's so talented that he could do either. He can stay in Tampa Bay and be like the Julian Edelman for Tom Brady, or he could go be the alpha in another offense. I think he's that good that even though he's on that 1 year contract, it doesn't worry me like investing him in a dynasty.
Yeah, I was just thinking as well, that Chick-fil-A team is looking pretty decent actually with Jones, Fournette and Mike Evans. Anyway, we'll keep it a wide receiver. We'll talk about the other guy in that wide receiver corner.
Yeah, you just mentioned him, Rich. Antonio Brown, he's re-signing with the Buccaneers next year. I think he's a really interesting player to evaluate because obviously we know he came in halfway through the season last year, and now he's going to get that full off season, linking up again with Tom Brady, learning this offense. So I'm just interested to know, where do you think he could potentially finish in 2021 in terms of fantasy?
So, looking back at last year, I'm not like a big fan of. We mentioned earlier with some of the other guys we've talked about taking the small sample size, but even so, you've got to say that Antonio Brown's 2020 performance was impressive. When you consider that, I think it was early 2019 he played for the Patriots those 2 games, and he came in with no training camp, and apparently. I was watching Pro Football Talk earlier today, and he's had arthroscopic knee surgery as well. So he had issues with his knees, apparently going back to last season. And despite that, in those 8 games, he was averaging 14 points per game. He averaged a 20% target share. I think there's 1 week where he was a total dud, where he had a target share less than 10%. So he was involved in that offense immediately. Fantasy perspective, I do have some concerns that even though he had a relatively good target share, he didn't have a top 24 finish in PPR score until week 15. But I think that's all cancelled out by the fact that his ADP is something around wide receiver 73 or something like that. I think, which is just ridiculous. Again, we talk about contending teams. I think Antonio Brown's a perfect target. I think Evans and Godwin are going to be the main guys there. But I don't see any reason why Antonio Brown, with a full off season, if his knee's at 100%, this is a guy that was one of the best to ever do it, and he was still phenomenal in 2018, his last year with Pittsburgh. I don't think there's any reason why he can't return at least wide receiver 3 numbers. I think he's one of those guys. He is going to boom or bust week to week just because of the presence of Evans and Godwin there. But at the price he is at the minute, you're easily going to get that back. That sort of cost back. I think he's well worth it. And I think contending teams, I would probably give up. Looking at how quickly this 2021 class has collapsed, if I'm a contending team, I would probably send a late second for Antonio Brown and see if you can get his owner to buy it. Because again, he's at the age where people just write him off. I think he's well worth having on your roster, and someone that I'd be comfortable sticking him a flex spot. If he booms, great. If he doesn't, not that much lost. So wide receiver 3 numbers for me, I think, comfortably.
Yeah, we actually took him in our Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty startup, a team that me and Matt co-own. We took him at the 1405, which is 14-team league. It's picked 201, which is ADP is 204 at the 17-10 in a traditional league. So we got him right about where he is, but I think he's like our wide receiver 5 or 6, wide receiver 6 in a 14-team league. So, I mean, I do like to try and win to begin with, and I think he's an ideal guy to be going after, especially if you've got a few younger dudes who might not hit. especially your rookies.
Yeah.
I see that he's a guy that's somebody to blend in nicely with the rookies, as someone that might have a year, might have a couple of years. He might want to stay around till Brady retires. Yeah. Who knows?
I just think with that ADP, that's what makes him such an attractive target for me. I mean, weeks 10 till 17, he was a wide receiver 18. So, I mean, if you can get anywhere near that kind of return on a guy that you can get wide receiver 74, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me.
And guys are going round that ADP. I don't even know. Like, no one's really going to get into your lineup week to week.
I think we just spoke about guys like Nelson Aguilar. I think he's right around there. I mean, I know who I'm taking, and it's not Nelson Aguilar.
We've got an interesting comment from Ali, our co-host, who said best receiving core in the league. So we'll throw that back to you, Rich. Is it the Bucs or is it Dallas? Or is it someone else?
I think it's the Jags, actually. With Trevor Lawrence, the guy that lifts all boats. Now, I think there's an argument for the best wide receiving core in the league. Didn't someone say they had to take a drink every time Ali mentioned the Bucs as well?
He's done it enough times, and that's just in chatting man about when he's actually on.
Oh, it's quality. I'll have a drink in a sec. So, yeah, what a fantastic wide receiver core the Bucs have got. And now we'll round it out with the tight end core. There's a few interesting guys in here. And there's one guy you want to particularly talk about, Matt.
Yeah, well, I think it was you that were going to ask the question. But
sorry.
I'll ask it if you want.
Matt.
I don't mind.
Oh, my God.
I'll ask it if you want.
Too many drinks. Cheers.
Too much water. I'll ask it to him. Right, Kev wants to know, Rich. Does OJ Howard need to move to achieve his full dynasty potential? And who is the tight end one for the Buccaneers in 2021?
So I actually really like OJ Howard. Now, I was going to say love, but, I don't really like tight ends that much in fantasy. I know, Matt, I know you love to go robust tight end. And we've seen leagues where you go 4 tight ends in a row to start. But most of us prefer, if you can't get one of the elite options, I prefer to wait until as late as possible. The only exception would be if it was a start 2 tight end league, for example, where obviously the value of tight ends is rockets massively. So somebody like OJ Howard is usually a target that I'd like to get in the late rounds. I think if you're going to wait on tight end and just throw a few random darts at the end of your startup, you want somebody that with a phenomenal athletic profile. And OJ Howard hits that. If you look at Player Profiler, I think he's in the 90th percentile for his 40-yard dash, speed score, agility, and his catch radius. And people seem to forget that he has actually been productive in the NFL. As a rookie, he had 4 tight end 1 finishes. I think he had 26 receptions, 432 yards, 6 touchdowns, which is a great return for a rookie. Then in 2018, because I think it was in the 2019 preseason or prior to where Bruce Arians came in, where there was a lot of hype, and OJ Howard was going really early in, because in 2018 he was like 34 receptions, 565, 5 touchdowns, and I think he was the tight end 6 in points per game. And then it was 2019 where this huge drop came. I remember in the off-season when Arians came in, people were saying that he doesn't use his tight end and things like that, and that's why they felt that OJ Howard would suffer. And to be fair, 2019 was easily his worst year up until that point, because I think I don't have his exact numbers, but he had a real down season on where he was being taken in redraft and dynasty and things like that. And then he took another blow, obviously, before the 2020 season. Tom Brady became the quarterback. They bring in Rob Gronkowski as well, and it looks like OJ Howard's completely finished. But I think people are forgetting that he actually started the 2020 season quite brightly, even with Gronkowski on the roster. So he had 2 tight end 1 finishes in the first 4 weeks of the season, 11 receptions, 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then he obviously went down with did he rupture his Achilles, I think, in the week 4 game. So, and obviously after that, Gronkowski ascended to the tight end 1 in that offense. And I think people are forgetting that Howard actually looked quite promising with Tom Brady as his quarterback. So, I mean, what's his ADP now? I think we had it on the show sheet, and it's really low. You can pretty much get him for nothing. I think he's the Titan 34. Yeah. Titan 34. I do have worries about the ruptured Achilles. That's a major injury to come back from. And we're not allowed to talk about injuries, I know, unless you've got a doctorate, as some people pointed out on Twitter this week. But that is a major concern. I'm not going to sit here and say I know like whether a guy can come back at 100% from an Achilles injury. But when he's going as the tight end 34, who cares? You're throwing a dart if he comes back and he's still as athletic as he was. I expect Gronk to be the tight end one in that offense this year. But Gronk is pretty much playing year to year at the minute. I still really like OJ Howard. Even if he stays with the Bucs, if he gets a move, it's a bit like David Njoku. You want him to be freed potentially. But I don't think it's a death sentence, even if he stays in Tampa Bay. They've picked up his fifth-year option. Bruce Arians has talked really positively about him in recent weeks and months and about his return from injury. So I don't think it's necessarily a death sentence if he stays in Tampa Bay, which many people seem to believe it is. But I think that injury is making people forget how well he started the 2020 season.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you, Matt, for asking my question. I feel like I've let myself down there, so really appreciate you cleaning up. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, with Bruce Arians and this myth about not using tight ends. It's funny that Tom Brady comes in as OC and they start using the tight end. It's very, very interesting what player power can do, especially when you're the GOAT. But just looking at his ADP, tight end 34 in round 20. A tight end free, but you're not going to find a tight end free with that upside. It's incredible. We've seen that he finished as a tight end 14 in 2018, and that was on 10 games. You said Richie was tight end 16 points per game. He was on a mini breakout, and now it's a shame that he got injured that season and he's been injured again. I'm not a doctor, but if he can come back,
we need to see a doctorate.
Yeah, what you need. He's a perfect guy to go for, and I mean, you could probably get him for a third. But even if you can't, what if you have to pay a late second? You're taking guys like Kadarius Toney and Amari Rodgers, guys like that in the end of round 2. Surely OJ Howard's got as big a chance to be a hit than guys like that. And if you need a tight end, I'd take him over Pat Fryermuth.
Yeah, I would as well. I think the upside, if you're going to throw those darts, I think OJ Howard, guys like that, are perfect sort of profile. You go for another one, Albert Aquabunim. I just wanted to say his name, to be fair. I don't really care if you buy
show
one.
off.
But you can probably get Howard for a third or fourth, you know. You don't have to pay that second. You can probably get him for pretty much a throw-in, or as part of a bigger package, just throw OJ Howard in as part of the deal. And I think he's worth just stashing and see what happens.
Yeah, just to round it up, all I'll say is we've seen the potential that he has. It's not like one of these rookie tight ends where we're just hoping that they're going to be what they believe that they are. I mean, we've seen it before with OJ Howard. It's just those injuries that's held him back. So yeah, if Gronk moves on, or even I think with Gronk there, I still think OJ Howard can be used and with that athleticism. I mean, we talk about Gronk. He's not exactly a guy that's the staple guy of health, is he really, when it comes to Gronkowski? So, I mean, either of these guys have got a shot. So, yeah, happy to take a shot on him later on.
We're burned by, obviously, I think it was the 2018 season or 2019 where, this is off the top of my head, there were concerns about how Arians would use his tight end, but I'm pretty certain Howard was still being taken quite highly as a tight end, and people got burned by him and then just cast him aside. That's it. Want nothing to do with him, and his value drops through that. I don't even know 34 tight ends in the like Howard can be that cheap. I just don't get it. But I think people have been burned by him, and that's it. And he's sort of tossed aside, and you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, I was just going to say OJ's worth the squeeze.
Awful.
Don't laugh, Rich. Don't laugh.
We're both said awful at the same time.
And on that note, I think we should move on, and we'll move on to the Falcons. So, Kev, I'll let you actually ask a question this time, and throw a question to Rich. I
really appreciate that, Matt. Thank you very much for letting me ask my question. I will ask it now. So, yeah, the Falcons. Obviously, Matt Ryan's a QB. He's been there for quite a while. There's a lot of talk about him potentially getting replaced this offseason by a rookie at pick 4, which I thought was interesting. I think Matt Ryan's been fantastic over his career. He's not a guy that they can move on from as well. He's tied into a pretty substantial contract. So I just want to know your thoughts on Matt Ryan, Rich, about where he sits in your dynasty rankings, and putting like your thinking hat on, how many years do you think he'll remain as a starter for the Falcons?
So I think he's around. I've got him around QB 19 or 20, something like that. But that probably doesn't do him justice. And the reason you can get away with putting him there in your rankings, though, is because I think people have him a lot lower. They're scared of his age and things like that. I think he is going to be 36 years old going into the 2021 season. But I think I'm still more than happy to get Ryan as my QB2, or even better if you can get him as your QB3 in a Superflex league, because it comes back to what we talked about. I'm not comparing Matt Ryan to Tom Brady, by the way, but it comes back to what we were saying earlier, that people are frightened away by the age of these guys like Brady and Ryan who are going in the QB20 and beyond that. And Ryan's still going to be in the league a lot longer potentially than some of these guys going around him. Like, I don't even know if Jared Goff, for example, would last the season. And you look at he restructured his contract in March, so it makes it difficult for the Falcons to move on from him now anytime prior to 2023. I'd expect him to be the Falcons quarterback for the next 2 or 3 years. And I think even at the end of that, he'll be 38, 39. He could even get traded and play another year or so on another team if necessary. But from a dynasty perspective, he's going to play the next 2 or 3 years with the Falcons. I don't think the Falcons ever really had that much intention of going quarterback at 4. No. I think that was more talk from the media and talk from social media. I think they were happy with Ryan, and I don't see why they shouldn't be. I think he's been more than effective. He had a little bit of a lull last year, but nothing major. He still finished as a QB1 in PPR. I think he was the QB12. His ADP at the minute's around QB19, and he's only finished lower than a QB1 4 times in his career, and I think only once since 2016. I think people are looking at that lull he had in mid-season in 2020, where the whole Falcons offense seemed to have that sort of lull, apart from maybe Calvin Ridley, and he was still the QB12, so he still finished as a QB1. I think he's still worth the price that you have to pay for him in Dynasty. I maybe wouldn't be comfortable if you really wait in Superflex League and you have to take him as a QB1, but give me him all day, QB2 or 3, and I think that offense is going to be explosive again this year.
Yeah, I think are you trying to, because I know Rich, we just talked about it with Brady and Kev grabbing Brady in that league ring together. Do you want to let everybody know who took Matt Ryan just before I got the chance?
I did take Matt Ryan, yeah.
And it was as your QB3, he'd have been my lovely QB2, and I'd be perfectly fine having him as my QB2, but you just got greedy and you wanted him as your QB3 and ended any hopes.
What I'm thinking as Kev really is that I took Justin Fields in the set, so I took Herbert and Fields, and then I stole his rankings, but we won't get into that. So Fields, obviously, I took in the second round, and then you're thinking, I mean, let's get it right. I think Fields should absolutely start week 1. Who the hell wants to watch Andy Dalton on Sunday night? But there is a risk that the Bears stick with their plan not to start him. So again, Ryan is a perfect bridge there. And even if Fields sits all season, I'm more than happy with Matt Ryan as my QB2.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we might touch upon it when we talk about Julio, but for me, there was never any doubt that there was keeping Julio and Matt Ryan this season. I think it's an explosive offense with both them guys. It just wouldn't make sense to move one of them. I think if you're going to do it, you'd move off Ryan, you'd move off Julio, and you start from scratch. And there was in a perfect position, if they wanted to do that, to do it with pick 4, but there's just too much tied in to that deal with Matt Ryan. I know he restructured to probably make it even harder for him to get rid of him. But yeah, he's QB19. He's a solid back-end QB2. I think he's at a spot as well where there is guys going around him that have probably got more upside if everything goes their way.
Yeah.
But there's hardly any, if any, that have got his floor where you know that he's going to be a safe QB2. You don't have to worry about him for the next few years. Even if in 2 years he does leave, he does get traded, he's going to have another starting job.
He'll start somewhere else. That's the thing. I don't think Matt Ryan's going to be out of the league even if the Falcons had have gone quarterback at 4 and they traded Matt Ryan like next off season. I don't expect that Ryan's going to become a backup. I think he's still good enough to start on a number of other teams, the Giants, for example.
Had to throw that one in, didn't you, Rich? I think he's just a safe quarterback, and is that ideal quarterback that you want as a QB2, or if you're lucky enough as your QB3.
Indeed. So we'll move on to a running back core now. Wow, this is an interesting one to look at.
Why such a great offense to this running back core is.
It's an interesting one because I don't know how it's happened, but Mike Davis, he managed to get through the draft without getting any competition, and he's atop that depth chart. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, we know that the success he had in Carolina when McCaffrey went down injured last year, he finishes the RB12, which was amazing. So I just want to know, Rich, what your feelings are on him. Is this somebody that you could potentially target as just one of those cheap options at running back, or do you think there's maybe somebody else in this backfield that could emerge and take it from Davis?
No, but we'll get to that in a second. So as much as I like Mike Davis's legs, and they're impressive and things like that, despite the fact that I infamously said on Fantasy Wildcard podcast that Mike Davis was the greatest waiver wire pickup, which seemed to be a death sentence for him after that. So there's no doubt last year he was phenomenal when he came in initially in relief of Christian McCaffrey. He had over 20 points in his first 3 games when he faced the Chargers, Cardinals, and Atlanta in weeks 3 to 5, and he had a decent return of just over 13 PPR points in week 6. I think it was against the Bears. But what people are then forgetting is that, and he was barely playable then until around week 11. I don't think he even had double-digit PPR points again until week 11, and then he had another big game in week 14 where I think he went over 20 points, but then complete dud in the fantasy playoffs. So last season, that was fine because you either took Mike Davis off of waivers or he was stashed at the very bottom of your roster. So you were just delighted to get what you could from him. And, like you said, Matt, at the end of the season, he returned RB12, so it was an RB1 for the season. But that's not painting the full picture of how badly he dropped off mid-season. What I would say is his current price, I think, is the RB29. I would actually be comfortable taking him there. I think he's, it doesn't look at the minute like there's anyone in free agency that would be a big threat. I think he is probably going to be the lead back. And I think RB29 is a fine price to pay for him. My worry with Mike Davis is I don't think that'll be his price by the end of the summer. If he posts another 2 or 3 pictures of his quadriceps or whatever the hell they were bulging out of his shorts, he's going to continue to move up in ADP, and he's going to get to a point where I'm not comfortable with it. Right, if I'm doing a startup right now, I'll be 29 or 30. Yeah, great. I'll take him as a lead back in what's going to be a really good offense. But as his price goes up, I'm out on that. I think people are forgetting how poor he was through the middle of the season. Conveniently, after I said he was the greatest waiver wire pickup ever. In terms of the rest of that backfield, though, I don't think either of those guys, Javian Hawkins or Caleb Huntley, are a threat really to be the lead back. I think Hawkins is the more interesting one of the two. But he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't really have like the prototypical size to be a lead back in the NFL. He was really productive at Louisville, and I think he was a receiver coming out of high school as well. So he's got the chops to like be
great Debbie knowledge, that Rich.
It is. Debbie. I spoke to the Debbie Pingu before I came on, and so I think. Out of the two, at the very end of your rookie drafts where it's just dead, I like to take a shot on Javian Hawkins, and you can potentially even get him undrafted. Caleb Huntley, I have to say, when I was obviously agreed to come on last night, and I was looking at these two guys, and I was thinking, why is there so much hype for Caleb Huntley? I don't understand it. And then I realized the only person that was hyping him was you, Matt.
Well, my words obviously go a long way.
He's to be fair, he has got that prototypical size of and he is more in that Mike Davis mode. So if anyone out of the two of them is going to take Mike Davis's job as the lead back, it could be Huntley, but his profile doesn't really excite me at all, to be honest. I think Davis will be the lead back unless someone comes in as a free agent. And at his current price, I'd take Davis, but that price goes up, even as a lead back in a really good offense, then I think I'm out, to be honest. What about you two?
Yeah, running back 29, I think it's a fair price for him right there. He's 28 years old. He's not got a lot of tread on the tyres. I think we're seeing a correction already, like you alluded to, Rich. He doesn't go running back 29 in the few recent dynasty startups I've been part of. And then I just think in terms of those two guys, Hawkins or Huntley, I don't see it personally for either of them. I'm not gonna smash Huntley too much because I don't want to upset Matt and Jake that he let me. He actually asked the question for me earlier, which was really nice of him. But
I think you're out and you want to shoot me.
I just think the Falcons. I think they nailed on to add someone else, whether it be getting Gurley back or someone like a Lev Bell. So yeah, Davis is good at 29, but I don't think he goes there.
Agreed.
Smashing. Well, we'll move on from this awful backfield and we'll talk about a lot better actually.
You want to spend 20 minutes on Caleb Huntley, or
I've had enough. I've had enough talk about him in his last show. I always get Kev always shouts at me. I don't know if the viewers know this, but if I get excited about any kind of player, Kev just wants to shoot me down immediately. So I'll just keep quiet this time.
It's so true. It's so true. So I won't shoot him down, but we'll move on to wide receiver. We've got Julio Jones, who I'm actually going to compare as the Derrick Henry of wide receivers in the sense that you can't sell him at a fair value. He's currently going at wide receiver 26. Is that too low for startups in your eyes, Rich?
I think it's perfect. If I think I wouldn't say it's criminal that he's going there. I can sort of see why he's dropping that far. But again, we've talked about it quite a bit on some of the previous guys we've talked about, is that if you're going out and you want some immediate production, or you're a contender and you want some immediate production, just go out and try and buy Julio Jones. I think he was in and out of the lineup, obviously, last year. And I think that's led to many people believing he's finished and that he's washed. But when he was active in the 9 or 10 games he did play, he was the same Julio. He produced 51 receptions, 771 yards, 3 touchdowns, 16.23 PPR points per game. I think he was the wide receiver 14 in points per game. If he stays with the Falcons, he's a smash at that ADP. Even if he only plays 9 or 10 games, give me Julio over some of the guys that's going in and around him. We've talked a bit about some of the other guys we take redraft and best ball. Julio's another one. I'm not sure I don't play much best ball, to be honest, so I'm not up on the ADPs. But if he's going around that same area of the draft, then I'm taking him every time. And you, to touch on what you asked, Kev, in terms of Julio and Henry, Julio has reached that point in his career where his production for your fantasy team has surpassed his actual value in the eyes of like the dynasty community or the guys in your league. So if you've got him and you're a contender, you can't sell him because nothing you get back is going to surpass what he's going to give you when he's healthy. I mean, I haven't really seen any trades for Julio. I traded for him at the end of last season in a league where I was contending. One of the few leagues I was contending. My window was coming to a close and I sold Will Fuller straight up for Julio. And I still don't hate that, to be honest. But yeah, it's the point now where people are not going to buy him. You're not going to get a first-round pick for Julio Jones. So I think if he's on your roster, unless you're totally tearing your team down and you're just taking whatever you can get, he's past the point where you can sell him because you're not going to get back the sort of value you're going to get from having Julio in your team in 2021.
Yeah, I think I agree. If you're going to draft him in your startups, you get him at the wide receiver 26. I think you're committing then to being on him for the rest of his career. To be honest, I can't see there being any way increasing value. Maybe mid-season if he's come on strong again in 2021, you've maybe got that window to sell him. But if you're a contender, you're not going to want to sell him, are you? So for me, I think if you are drafting him and you're giving up to be a contending team, I think you're then signing up to him for the rest of his career.
Yeah. I've got him top 20 dynasty wide receiver, so he's always available for me. Sometimes I'll let him go around past me and get him back the other way. Yeah. I could have took him in one way in at the moment, but I just felt like I was getting 100% exposure to Julio. Maybe my rankings are a little bit wrong.
So then I took him.
So, see, caring guy. We'll keep it on at wide receiver, though. We'll talk about Julio's teammate now, Calvin Ridley.
So obviously there's the rumours going around that potentially Julio Jones, he doesn't even stay around in Atlanta. So what would you view that as maybe a positive for Calvin Ridley? We know he's then going to get that increase in opportunity. Or do you maybe even see it as a negative? Obviously Julio Jones, we're used to him seeing usually 2 defenders, maybe even 3 defenders on him at times. So would it potentially be a negative?
So for me, I would say that I think I've got no worries about. Obviously, I was very vocal about Calvin Ridley last year. He was one of the few things that I got right in 2020. Some of the guys I had in ahead of guys like DJ Moore and things like that, and people said it was just bait. You were wrong, by the way. This is nothing that I was right. So I was really high on Ridley already. And the only worry I had going into 2020 was that people did argue that he only benefited from having Julio playing opposite him. And what's Calvin Ridley going to be like if he hasn't got Julio taking away, the number one corner and things like that? But I think Ridley blew that myth away in 2020. You look at the games that he played without Julio. Obviously, it was a great chance to see because Julio missed 6 games. And in the games where Julio didn't play, Ridley was even more productive. He had 3 more PPR points per game, 2 more receptions per game, 3 more targets per game. In the games where Julio played, he only had 76 yards per game. In the games without Julio, he had 110. And then a smaller sample size, and obviously this is a minuscule sample size, but there was a little sign of it in 2019 as well. He had 1 game without Julio where he had 8 receptions for 91 yards. Ridley's around my wide receiver 10, I think, at the minute in Dynasty. I think he moves up if Julio leaves. I've got no doubts about him. And even with Julio going, I think, obviously, they've drafted Kyle Pitts as well. That takes away some of the attention of the defense as well. I think Ridley's absolutely fine either way.
Yeah, I think Ridley was your most popular tweet of all time, your best take of all time as well, Rich. So
the only good take.
Yeah, it wasn't hard, was it? There wasn't much competition to beat.
I must admit, though, I liked Ridley, but I was lower than you. I think I had concerns about it being a Batman and Robin situation with Julio being the main man and Ridley benefiting from that. But like you said, this season that completely got dispelled, that myth. That's done and dusted. And if they both play full 17 games this season, I think Ridley will do him, But it's like a Batman situation for me now with them two.
And then you're bringing Kyle Pitts as well.
Oh, my God.
Tasty.
We need a third one in that Spider-Man meme, don't we?
Russell Gage.
Oh, don't.
No. I keep seeing people on Twitter saying, buy Russell Gage, and you're just chasing it. If Julio goes, buy Russell Gage. I mean, I know he's pretty much free, so it's not. But the more people say buy Russell Gage, the more his ADP goes up. It wasn't even that good without Julio last year. I think that I'm not even going to try and say his name. Olamide was actually more effective than without Julio than Gage was. Gage is just he's all right as a bit of a roster plug at the end of your roster, but I'm not interested. Even if Julio disappears, just not interested.
You a fan of Ridley, Matt?
Ridley, yeah, of course I'm a fan of it. It's hard not to be a fan of Ridley. I mean, and then just going off his ADP as well, wide receiver 11. I think that's more than fair value. And yeah, I think his upside's incredible. We've got Matt Ryan at quarterback, who, as we've just mentioned at the start, is constantly a QB1 in fantasy. So, you've got a safe quarterback there. So, yeah, sky's the limit for Calvin Ridley, and he's proved it already. And even the potential that Julio Jones leaves, it's mouthwatering. And as you say, Kyle Pitts coming in, it's not a harm to me at all to Ridley. So, yeah, more than happy to have Ridley on my roster.
Yeah, I think Ridley he's just amazing, and going in round 5, it's a steal. If you start your draft,
he's still going there. Like he went there. I'm sure that's about where he was going last year. His ADP hasn't really risen, and I don't really understand it.
Just think if you start your drafts 2 QBs, 2 running backs in any order, and then you're getting Ridley as your wide receiver 1 in round 5.
Yeah,
you've basically won your league.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of winning your leagues, we'll talk about a tight end that's potentially going to win leagues for many, many years in Kyle Pitts, the rookie unicorn. So we'll just focus on his rookie season really to begin with, Rich. In terms of Kyle Pitts, what sort of rookie season can we expect, and how long before he's the top dynasty tight end?
So I will say, obviously, we've had a few arguments about Kyle Pitts. I think we're coming around a little bit. So I tweeted last September or October, he was already my dynasty tight end 3 or 4. I think I may have said 3. In fairness, I just woke up from a nap and I forgot about Darren Waller possibly. But he's certainly my tight end 4 even before he was drafted. So I don't think I'll have much Kyle Pitts in redraft or in potentially in best ball. Redraft, I don't think I will, because I think his ADP is enormously high. And I don't think he'll return the sort of numbers where you're going to get that sort of cost back. But I've got no problem in Dynasty in taking him early as the tight end, even potentially tight end 3. I think 2 years' time we'll be taking Kyle Pitts as the tight end 1, and I'm pretty confident in that. I think he's phenomenal. I don't think we've seen anything like him for so long. And it's just the fact that it can be a mismatch all over the field. I think he'll line in that Falcons offense as well. I think he'll line up. He could potentially line up outside. I think he's going to be a monster. This year, I think we might see modest numbers from him as a rookie tight end, but I think we'll see enough flashes where he continues to climb up dynasty rankings. And I think 2 years is possibly even conservative to say will be the dynasty tight end 1.
Fair.
When he busts now, we just delete anyone.
Wow, nice.
I think I've got to be a little bit cautious of what I say, because obviously we know Rich is super high on Kyle Pitts, but we spoke about it a little earlier, didn't we, Kev, when we were talking about the Lions? Rich, you're not going to like this, but I think I've got Hawkinson over Kyle Pitts in Dynasty. Oh. Yeah, I mean, but it's the thing that I fully understand that the upside that's there and everything that's said about Pitts, I can fully see why it is, but it's just always when it comes to these rookies, you're talking about the potential, whereas we talk about Hawkinson, he's shown that consistency. He's now in an offense where he's going to get utilised a lot. That's not saying that Kyle Pitts isn't going to get utilised a lot with the Falcons, but I think you could argue that Hawkinson's the number 1 receiving option for the Lions.
Who else is there?
Exactly. So for me, when you're talking about tight ends, you want those guys that are getting that volume. That's what makes them king. That's why we talk about Travis Kelce. Darren Waller, Kittle. That's why them 3 are the top 3 guys, because the tight ends that get targets, and for that reason, that's why I think I've got Hawkinson just a bit above him. But I do just want to say that it's going to be so juicy. Just imagine if it's Julio and Ridley on the outside, and then they put Pitts in the slot. I mean,
who do you cover?
Exactly, it's going to be absolutely mouthwatering. So I do fully understand the excitement.
I think that as well, just going back to Matt Ryan as well, he returned, like he had the lull in the middle of last season. That's why I love getting him where you can. I think he'll be a top 10 quarterback this year. I think he'll return much better numbers than last year. I think everything's set up for him to do so. There's rumours about Julio getting traded, but we don't know, do we? That's speculation. We'll see what happens. But if Julio, Ridley and Pitts are on that team at the start of the season, I think I'll have a hell of a lot of Matt Ryan in redraft as well again, because he'll be disrespected like he is every year, and he returns numbers that are more than sufficient, and I think his upside is huge this year with Pitts, Ridley, and Julio.
Yeah, I just think with Pitts, like he's going at the 105 in rookie drafts. It's ridiculous. It should be going like the 110. I'd take the 5 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, and Chase over him. I won't have him anywhere. And he's the best tight end prospect of all time in my tight end model. But he's going at the start of round 4 in your startups.
I took him there. I traded my first 3 picks and then took Kyle Pitts as the first player.
Oh God, no! That
was idiotic, but that is a team that I decided unproductive wrestle. So I get it in rookie drafts though, especially when it's not tight end premium. So I was in a 1 QB league last week where Kyle Pitts went as the 101 in a 1 QB. Rookie draft, and now that is brave. I mean, you basically, it's a little bit like a different position. We talked about it in podcast last summer, I think, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire was being drafted. It is absolute maximum ceiling, like in redraft as well, like in the first round. I think taking Pitts at the 101 in a 1 QB league is absolute ceiling. If he doesn't completely smash, and then it's just a waste of a pick. And I think in non-tight end premium, you do have to consider even the 105 is potentially a little bit expensive, because really unless he becomes, even though I think he will, I do think he'll give you eventually that advantage that guys like Travis Kelce or George Kittle give you. You are taking a big risk at the 105 to say, because if he doesn't, even if he falls slightly short, then it's like sunk cost really taking him that early if it's not tight end premium. But I'm sure I will do that in at least 1 or 2 leagues, just in case.
It's just interesting, though, isn't it, that he goes a full round before Calvin Ridley. I mean, we're expecting a lot, aren't we, from Pitts?
Yeah, it's his absolute ceiling. I do get it. Like it's gutsy to go for it, but we'll see. I'll remind you of this next year when you work. And Matt, you obviously you're a robust tight end, so you'll be taking Pitts in the first round of the start of this time next year.
I can guarantee I'll have hardly. I might have to get one share just in case, but I don't think I'll have many shares at all.
Yeah, we love him here, but it's one of those things where if he hits, fair play. If he doesn't, then we look like legends.
Yeah.
So yeah, that brings us to the end of your stint on the Streamathon, Rich. Thank you for.
It was great to be back.
I enjoyed it.
It was emotional. I cried a little bit actually. You might not have seen, but yeah, just thank you for coming on and giving us your insight and your charm, your banter as usual. It's great to link up with you again, and tell everybody where you are on Twitter and what hot takes you've got upcoming this off season.
Yeah, I've got nothing coming up. You can follow me on Twitter at FFMiz1. I am in semi-retirement from being an analyst, but if you want to see passive-aggressive tweets about fantasy Twitter all day, then follow me there.
No, it's been wonderful to have you back on. And you said that you're the hype man for the follow-up act that's on next.
I can't wait for this one. I'm going to go and watch this one. Two of my favourite analysts are on next, so looking forward to it.
Well, I see him sat in the lobby, so exciting times indeed.
All right. I'm too nervous to speak to them, so I'm going. All right.
See you later, Rich.
Bye.
It's also time to say bye to you as well, Matt, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That's probably my longest stint, I think, of this one. So I'm a nice little rest. But like Rich said, I think I'm gonna go off and fanboy over the next two guests that you've got coming up because, yeah, I'm a big fan of the work. So gonna look forward to it, and obviously bringing Ali back in.
Yeah,
one of my favourite analysts.
Yeah, we'll bring Ali back in now, handing over the baton as such on the third leg.
Right,
so I'll well-deserved rest, Matt.
Absolutely, get a little bite to eat and watch you guys chop it up.
Indeed, we'll see you soon, Matt.
See you later. Take care.
See you, Matt.
Lovely. So it's me and you, Ali. Now we're sticking in the South, but we're moving from the NFC to the AFC South, and we'll be talking about the Colts and Jags initially. And we've got two fantastic guests. I can see one's in the lobby right now. So, I mean, what can we say about this team? The representing Road to Underworld, one of the biggest platforms out there. So we're absolutely delighted, excited to welcome on two of the brightest minds in the community, two outstanding guys as well. We'll bring them in now. It's Josh Larkey, we can follow at JLarkey Tweets, and it's Cody Carpentier, we can follow at Carpentier NFL. Good afternoon, gents. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, we're getting pretty tired. We're on us 11th hour so far today. So, yeah, it's all for a great cause to raise funds for Mind Charity, supporting people with mental health issues. So, very excited to have you both on and representing the Road to Underworld brand. I can see the background for Cody for playerprofiler.com. So,
yes,
it's going to be an exciting hour we've got with you. We've got the Colts and the Jags, and we'll kick off with the Colts, really. We've got a QB question from Ali to begin.
Yeah, so new Colts QB, Carson Wentz, been brought in over the offseason. His current ADP is the QB 20. So at that cost, are you buying at that cost? So just to put in perspective, Baker Mayfield and Matt Ryan are directly above him, and Zach Wilson and Kirk Cousins are directly below him.
Personally, I am. I think he's getting a little overlooked. He's got a top 3 offensive line, top 10 defense, got the next best running back in the NFL behind him. I mean, and you're looking at the talent that he has. If Paris Campbell's healthy, Michael Pittman, T.Y. Hilton can be that field stretcher like Deshaun Jackson has been for Carson Wentz. And then in that same area, it's Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. I prefer Wentz over those guys. I know some people don't. But then even Kirk Cousins is 4 years older. Matt Ryan's 8 years older. I don't think Wentz sucks, but I think there's room for him to grow, and I think QB 20 is a good spot for him, and I might have a couple of them.
Yeah, I think at that ADP, you have to be buying Carson Wentz. I mean, sure, he was terrible last year, but he had, 3 or 4 years in a row where he demonstrated that he's at least an average, if not above average quarterback. last year he demonstrated that he's willing to run a little more. And I mean, what quarterback is going to survive when the O-line is just decimated like that? I mean, we saw Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, even the greatest quarterback to ever walk the earth, potentially. Like, he struggled in the Super Bowl when there's no offensive line. And
Exactly.
yeah, I think I'm going to give Wentz is one of the two guys I'm giving a mulligan to. So I think I'm above consensus on Wentz and then Daniel Jones. And it's kind of the idea that if you have no skill players and no offensive line, what should we really expect from the quarterback? So huge upgrades both with the O-line and skill position players. I know us fantasy gamers don't really think about the Colts as this great wide receiver core necessarily. And yes, for fantasy, that's true, but these are all fine passable receivers. This is not a bad receiving core. And I guess we'll just like see who emerges, but Pittman, Hilton, Campbell, Pascal, these are all competent pass catchers. Nyheim Hines, you can kind of throw in there because of how they use him. So I think he's got enough talent, is a good enough quarterback, and then we'll have a top 5 O-line with Jonathan Taylor keeping defenses honest. Yeah, I think. Why won't Carson Wentz be a low-end QB1, high-end QB2 for next year? And what is he, 28, 29 years old? He's still young enough. So
yeah, 28.
Yeah. Do you think they're done at the wide receiver core? Do you think they could be in the Julio sweepstakes or somebody like that?
I don't think Ballard is the type of GM to spend money like that at receiver. I think they have a pretty underrated receiving core, just the depth behind it. Even all the way down to like undrafted guy, they got Tyler Vaughns, who actually competed with Michael Pittman and outproduced him in 2017 at USC. Great route runner. And then Mike Strawn from Charleston, one of my favorite guys coming into the process. He'll be competing out there. These are athletes. Ashton Dulin, one of the Podfather's favorite guys. Those are just they love having these athletes in there. I just don't see. I mean, we would love that, right? Wouldn't Julio Jones complete that offense? But I just don't see them forking out that amount of cash. I think Chris Ballard's too good of a GM to do that, unfortunately, I guess.
I was going to say the other thing is, if you just look at Phillip Rivers last year, he crushed it there. And think about his final season with the Chargers when he had kind of a down year and everyone was like, oh my goodness, what are the Colts doing? They're going to ride with old man Rivers. It's going to be horrible. And you know what? He was a really good quarterback. And it shows that with an average skill position core, a good running game, and an elite offensive line, even someone that many people will consider at the end of his career, or in Rivers' case, it was literally the end of his career, can still have an incredible season. So that's why I'm excited about just this Colts offense in general, is I think it could be significantly more creative than last year even, which would be a lot of fun to watch. And then obviously that's great for fantasy when you have an offense that's doing new things and pushing the ball down the field. So I'm excited about it. I mean, Rivers had 7.7 yards per attempt last year. That's incredible. That's well above average for someone who didn't even have Paris Campbell for the year. We're hoping that Paris Campbell doesn't have another freak injury. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Don't put that on us.
we'll edit that out. No, I was just going to say on Wentz, obviously QB20 is pretty decent. He's a guy that's been a QB1 twice in fantasy already, and I think one of the main things with him as well is he's got a 4-year contract with the Colts. He's giving you that stability that he's going to be a starter for 4 years. He's linking back up with Frank Reich, who was with him at Philly. He might be linking back up with Zach Ertz maybe if they can get a deal done later this offseason as well. So I think he's in a perfect spot to bounce back. And I think unlike Daniel Jones, who you mentioned before, I think he has got the stability that if he has maybe a below average season, he's going to get a couple of more years, a couple more shots in this offense. So we'll move. Oh, sorry.
Just a really quick one, Kev. Being obviously you're the resident Eagles fan, do you believe that Wentz has still got it and can bounce back this season?
Well, I think most QBs are system QBs. To be honest, I think anyone would have failed in that system. I mean, look at Mahomes in the Super Bowl, like he got mentioned before. Then I think it was such a bad place that nobody was going to hit for the Eagles last season in that dumpster fire. So I think I'd be happy to give him another shot in a better system now. But yeah, speaking of quality systems and quality players, actually, we'll speak about Jonathan Taylor. I mean, he's going as the running back 3 in dynasty startups. I know it was the breakout finder running back 1 in 2020. I mean, I do pay for the breakout finder. I'm not trying to steal any stats, unlike some in the community that you might be aware of. I just want to get your guys' takes on what spot you're comfortable taking him in startups. Is he running back 3? Is he running back 1? He's going at the back of round 1. So what's your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor?
Well, we have him on Player Profiler. Kind of a spoiler alert for everyone that isn't plugged into our paid content. We've got him at RB1 in Dynasty. This guy's young. He had a ridiculous rookie season. What did he have? 1,500 total yards as a rookie, even though he wasn't even the primary back until like week 11. Showed us that the one blip on his profile was we knew that he was a fine pass catcher, but we weren't quite sure if that would translate at the NFL level, because sometimes there's these players that just sort of get pigeonholed as like, this guy's going to get 300 carries this season. And they don't really think about this guy. I mean, if you love having the ball in his hands, why not also throw to him and give him some screen passes, let him run some routes? And I think we all saw that with Jonathan Taylor last year. Insanely efficient in the passing game. And, I mean, we've all seen there's that new video circulating where Jonathan Taylor's catching some deep balls. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, how do you not have him as the Dynasty RB1 if he's going to be getting 275-plus carries and 40 to 60 targets this next season with an incredible offensive line?
Everything, right? Josh just said everything, but I think the biggest thing for me is he finished top 5 in rushing, total touchdowns, catch rate, breakaway runs, top 10 in fantasy points per game, like the important receiving metrics, yards per route run, top 10. And he didn't really do anything until the latter half of the season, like after week 11 and on was really when he broke out. He had a couple games early on, but I mean, one of my favorite things to go back to is just from an athletic standpoint, only 6 players have ever ran a 4.4 or under at 220 plus pounds. It's him, Saquon, Gibson, Antonio Gibson, Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson, and Niall Davis. And just like the guys on that list, and for me, your question was how high do you have him on your rankings? I got him 1. I'd take him 1 in a 1 QB dynasty startup all day, right? But for me, it's between him and Saquon Barkley, and those guys are both on that list. I know a lot of people have McCaffrey there, but I mean, it's hard to really get off of any of those 3 guys personally. And for everything Josh said, I have no argument because we're in the same boat for Jonathan Taylor.
I was wondering as well, what spot would you guys have him in a Superflex startup in round 1? Which part of the round would you be happy taking him in a Superflex dynasty startup?
Superflex, I'd say like mid round 1 is probably early round 1. It just kind of depends on how many flex spots there are, things like that. Because if it's a pretty shallow starting roster, then yes, you're going to want to prioritize quarterback a little bit more if it's super flex with maybe only 1 flex spot. But if you have 3-4 flex spots, I mean, Jonathan Taylor can still be in the conversation as the first pick in that draft. So it just kind of depends on what those roster requirements look like. Are you similar, Cody? I see.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, the automatic would be to say quarterback, but once you get past like the first couple quarterbacks, there's a little bit of a teardrop there. And that's kind of like the area I would take Taylor in. For me, it's like you got Mahomes, Prescott, Murray, Allen, Herbert, guys like that. And then there's a little bit of a drop there. I think I would feel good taking him in that area between 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that, depending where I got, depending where my spot was at. But, I mean, I wouldn't be mad with that at all.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say the other one is I know more and more dynasty leagues do like the half point for carries or a half point for first downs. Like I know the Scott Fishbowl this year is running back the scoring system, so it's going to be half point for first down. And I mean, how is Jonathan Taylor not just sitting there, just ready to get you 5 to 10 first downs a game and just gobble up those extra points?
On a good team as well, yeah. I mean, he's on a team that's going to be basically controlling the game and getting tons of first downs, running out the clock. So in that format, it's going to become even more valuable, I guess.
Yeah.
No concerns for me either about Marlon Mack or maybe the next guy that you want to talk about a little bit, Ali.
Yeah, so just what your take is. 2 Colts players I'm going to name, 1 wide receiver, 1 running back. Just Naheem Hines or Paris Campbell. Who would you rather own in a dynasty league? So Hines' ADP is the RB 42, and Paris Campbell's is the wide receiver 73.
I mean, personally, I'm taking Paris Campbell every time. I mean, that's your 4-round difference there, and I think by the time Hines is going off the board, I've already turned to receivers just because I like to lean toward those running backs earlier on. With Hines, you're really just chasing those 3 big games last year where he had 20 points plus, and 2 of them came when Jonathan Taylor didn't play. So Campbell turns 24 at the start of the season. If he's 100% healthy, which we hope he is, it's like week 1 last year, he had 9 targets, 6 for 71, 108 air yards. Like that was the guy that I wanted to be like the second-year breakout, following the footsteps of DJ Chark, do that type of thing. Be best comparable to Santana Moss on playerprofiler.com. Why can't he learn from T.Y. Hilton? Like, I love that spot, round 17 every time.
So I'm actually going to disagree here. I'd rather have Hines. We saw him already finish as an RB2 this past season, and I get it. Jonathan Taylor is going to be emerging more. But also Hines is entering year 4. There's a good chance he's not on the Colts next year. And we've seen more and more of this archetype of player just kind of last in the league until their late 20s. So personally, I'd rather just stick with Hines. I would think it's probably I haven't run the numbers, but I would imagine it's probably a higher like probability bet to take the running back who's already established himself as. So let's see. Hines has his 3 years in the league, he had 81, 58, and 76 targets. So fairly consistent high-end usage. Yeah, he might have the dip this year if it's just full-on Jonathan Taylor bell cow mode, but I think he could end up being one of these guys that lasts around a lot longer than expected, like a James White type where you're just consistently getting like an RB2, RB3, and then if things line up right, a low-end RB1, which I know James White was one season. So I would take Hines over the less proven Paris Campbell. Yeah, I think Paris Campbell has that ridiculous upside, but I just at this point there's very few guys that have back-to-back duds. I know it was injury related, but it's still just it's less likely in my mind that Paris Campbell becomes fully actualized.
So in that same area, like I kind of want to rebuttal a little bit, not much, because I kind of agree. I kind of see it, right? But like for Paris Campbell, what you're chasing is really Terry McLaurin type upside. In my opinion, if that offense really clicks, I don't think he gets to Terry McLaurin's like ceiling, but I think there's a lot there, especially with T.Y. Hilton being on a 1-year deal. And you look in the Hines area where he's getting drafted, guys like, let me see here, Rashad Penny, Jamal Williams. What else? I guess Darrell Henderson's a couple rounds earlier than him.
Would you rather have Hines than Henderson?
Would you?
I would.
You would?
I mean, Henderson stuck with Akers for at least 2 seasons. Hines could be set free.
Yeah, but you also got Marlon Mack back, and arguably the most athletic running back, second most athletic running back in this draft, Deion Jackson, that's now there as an undrafted guy. I see there's nobody else competing with him for the satellite role, I guess, in Indianapolis, but I can see him. You're looking from a perspective that he's going to go somewhere better, which I like. I guess my view was Paris Campbell staying in Indianapolis and then clicking. I can see it though. I can see it. I don't know if I like the round 13, but
what do you guys think? We're passing it back. Take us away, host.
I mean, I want to congratulate Ali on a fantastic question, getting a bit of a debate going. It
was a good one.
Spot on question. To be honest, you've made great points about both of them, about the fact that Hines, when he was mentioning about Hines, that his type of profile stick around, I was thinking J.D. McKissick, someone that's in his late 20s that's still around, and I mean, he got 100 targets last season. I think it's going to be interesting if he sticks with the Colts. So, I mean, he got some goal line carries. He scored a rushing touchdown from the goal line last season. Obviously, that was terrible for my Jonathan Taylor shares. But coming back to Paris Campbell, I wonder if they see him as the heir apparent to T.Y. Hilton, if he's going to assume that role if and when he goes, or if they do think both can work together on the field. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think they can be working together as such in the same offense, or do you think that he's not going to really get that opportunity until he's gone?
Well, I think the one thing that we have to remember with T.Y. Hilton is that T.Y. Hilton's a little bit of an outlier in terms of his size and what he's been able to do. And he also played with Andrew Luck in his prime. I mean, we like Carson Wentz, but I don't think we believe Carson Wentz is going to be the quarterback that Andrew Luck was. So I think that we have to remember that and kind of temper expectations a little bit, that it's unlikely Carson Wentz is going to support several fantasy relevant receivers and have one of them getting 1,400 yards like Hilton had a couple seasons. So I think that's the one thing that I would push back on with that. I do think that he is kind of being groomed for that role, but I don't think that role is necessarily going to be as fruitful as Hilton's career has been.
Just a quick one. Do you think Paris Campbell is there any chance he could be the wide receiver one on the team, or is it Pittman and Hilton and no chance for Campbell? If Campbell was to stay healthy the whole season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Campbell's the wide. Cody probably agrees. I mean, we saw it at the start of the season before he got injured last year. Like, Campbell was the focus in that passing game. And I mean, Pittman had so many opportunities. He had these crazy high snap shares, and he just really didn't fire. And that was, it kind of fed into my fears with someone like Pittman, where it's a guy that looks like an alpha, but doesn't really produce in college until he's older than everyone he's facing. And those guys often have kind of a rough transition to the NFL. So, Cody, you agree with that?
I'm 100% on that. I think, you have Jonathan Taylor there, obviously, and he's kind of going to be the focal point of that offense, but I think they're going to use Paris Campbell everywhere, and I think it's only going to help him learning from T.Y. Hilton to be part field stretcher, but I think he's going to do a lot in the middle quadrants of the field and behind the line of scrimmage, and kind of making him, I wouldn't say he's going to be the most targeted player on the team, because that could be Pittman. Like, you've seen Wentz target Alshon Jeffrey and tight ends as much as he has, like the big body guys, but from a usage standpoint, I don't know why Paris Campbell isn't the number one used wide receiver on the team, if that makes sense. But I'm agreeing 100% on that. I don't think Pittman is the guy. I think he's built to be the guy. He's competing with Des Patman and Mike Strawn to be like that prototypical big body X, but I don't think he has the alpha mentality to be in the alpha X role.
I also think Wentz kind of likes the smaller slot guy. I mean, none of us think Greg Ward is good. He would not even make a practice squad for a lot of NFL teams. He had 79 targets last year. So wow. I think that shows that Wentz is willing to target the slot guy, even if the slot guy is pretty terrible. So I think that also kind of shows the cards Wentz was dealt on the Eagles last year with no O-line, and then Greg Ward being his highest targeted player for half those games. So
my only pushback on that would be, pushback on that would be just the fact that we know how bad that receiving core was and how small it was.
That's true.
But really, we've seen everything, right? We've seen him target tight ends. We've seen him target Greg Ward, and then we've seen him target Alshon Jeffrey. So really, if he just leans on talent, why not Paris Campbell?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to make a note to myself to go and buy Paris Campbell. You've pushed me to do it now, so I appreciate that. But one guy that you might have to push me towards as well is Michael Pittman. I'm not a huge fan of his, but there's obviously a chance that he can be the wide receiver one in this offense. He's currently going at the wide receiver 40 in startups. Should I have more of Michael Pittman, or should I be pivoting to guys like Terrace Marshall, Will Fuller, Jalen Reagor, etc. And just to give that bit of context, when Pittman came out, he was the wide receiver 8 in the breakout finder for last year's rankings.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's, like I said, there's a chance, like we just went over this with Wentz, where we're either targeting tight ends the most, targeting Greg Ward, targeting Alshon Jeffrey. If he leans talent, I think the talent pushes him to Paris Campbell. I think Pittman's going to get usage. I think there is opportunity where he can push from 80 targets to 120. I think he had about 60, 65 this last year. So it's there. It can happen, but he also, you got to take that next step. You got to win in your routes. You got to do everything. You got to get to the next level. And he's still competing with Des Patman. Des Patman was still getting opportunities late last year. Ashton Dulin was still getting opportunities. It's not like I think he was the clear X in that offense, but I think I'd honestly rather have Terrace Marshall. I know people might say, well, that's a rookie receiver. You're leaning Terrace Marshall, but Robbie Anderson's gone next year, right? He's in this offense with Joe Brady that he already knows from college, and he's playing with DJ Moore, who's going to be the main slot guy. And if you get Terrace Marshall on one side and DJ Moore on the slot on the other side, or even if they're both outside, it doesn't really matter. But you're also playing with Sam Darnold there, so that's a tough thing. But you kind of have to depend on them sucking and getting a better quarterback, or Sam Darnold being that dude. And just kind of a little game you got to play with yourself, because it's Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold. I think I would lean Terrace Marshall.
Yeah,
love that.
I would say Terrace Marshall there pretty clearly for me. And at this point, the glasses are coming off.
Oh, I love that. Yes,
that was kind of a nod to Cody, who frequently rocks the glasses when he's streaming. So what I like about Terrace Marshall is that the guy's 6'3", 205, and he's incredibly athletic too. And I know that there's all this talk about like, oh, he's got this knee issue and stuff. Well, you know what the knee issue didn't do? It did not prevent him from running a 4.4 at 6'3", 205. That's something that Pittman can't do. Terrace Marshall was incredibly productive. And I always like to put to bed all the people that are like, Terrace Marshall doesn't have the ceiling because he wasn't productive in college. So as a sophomore, when he's 19 years old, he's competing with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, which could be like 2 of the 10 best receiver prospects of the past 5 to 10 years, for all we know. And before he got injured early on in that season, he actually had a similar amount of receptions and yards and touchdowns to Jefferson and Chase. He ended up finishing the season, even though he was injured for part of it, with 13 touchdowns, competing in the red zone with Chase and Jefferson. And then you want to know what he does the next year when he has the team to himself? He puts up over 100 yards per game in his 7 games before he opts out. And all the people are like, oh, but Kayshon Boutte had 735 receiving yards as a rookie at LSU, and Marshall had 731. So Boutte is better. And to that, I say, you need to go back, look at those game logs. Because when Terrace Marshall opted out after 7 games, he had 731 receiving yards. Boutte had 208. Boutte didn't even hit 50 receiving yards in a single game that he played with Marshall. Because when Marshall was on the field, once Chase and Jefferson weren't there, it was like, oh, this is clearly an alpha. They threw him in the slot, that big slot, and all he did was vacuum up target after target and was essentially unguardable. So I don't understand the people that say he doesn't have the production profile. He broke out as a sophomore with incredible target competition, and then as a 20-year-old junior showed that he is the focal point of that offense. So love Terrace Marshall.
Yeah, music to my ears. I'm a big fan of Terrace Marshall, and you've heard it from 2 of the smartest guys in the community. Get on the terrace. So we'll pass you back now to Ali for to wrap up the Colts with a tight end question.
Yeah, so the current Colt ends tight end room is pretty grim at the minute. Jack Doyle, Mo Alley-Cox, and newly drafted Kylan Granson. So is there any of these that you're interested in owning in Dynasty? Is there any that you're grabbing at the back end of your Dynasty startups? So Doyle's ADP is the tight end 33, and Mo Alley-Cox is the tight end 38.
I'm a fan of the Mac, Mo Alley-Cox. I think he's a pretty good player. they second round tendered him this year, so they clearly think quite a bit of him. And before he had, I think it was a knee injury last year, he was starting to get a lot of snaps, and he had 100-something yards in one of his games. Any tight end that can have a 100-yard game, you're on my radar. There are precious few tight ends out there that are even capable of that, because you have to be athletic, you have to be fast enough, and you actually have to be running legitimate non-little like drag and curl routes at the tight end position if you want to put up 100-something yards in a game. So I really think that Mo Alley-Cox has some kind of decent ceiling where if he's the tight end 8, tight end 10 next year, I wouldn't be shocked because it is a pretty wide open depth chart. So I think that he just has so much more upside than Doyle. So if you're putting in the show sheet that Doyle's startup ADP is 3 rounds ahead of Mo Alley-Cox, and Doyle's what? Is he 34?
31.
Like that.
Still
31.
4 years older, though.
Yeah, I think it's the back injuries or whatever that. I think of Doyle as like 35 at this point, but
pretty much. Yeah.
Doyle's in his 30s, and Mo Alley-Cox still in his 20s, and I think he's just quite frankly a better player right now. So give me the younger guy several rounds later.
For everything he just said, I'm on board with that. I think Doyle represents what Zach Ertz is for those same reasons. In for comparing Wentz's time in Philadelphia to being in Indianapolis now, I think Doyle's comparable to Ertz, and Alley-Cox to Goddard, being 27 years old. I'm taking Mo Alley-Cox every time, but I do think Kylan Granson throws a weird wrench into this whole kind of situation because he is pretty comparable to Trey Burton, who you saw come in last year, have rushing touchdowns and just be really a pain in the ass and score fantasy points that were like, come on, dude. Like you wanted to play Mo Alley-Cox in DFS. And it was like, okay, well, I guess Trey Burton's going to take those opportunities away. But I mean, this guy is 6'1", 241, played H-back at SMU, played tight end. He had 700 receiving yards as a junior at SMU after transfer from Rice. He's 4th-round pick, which was kind of a surprise. I didn't see him going that high, but it showed that Indianapolis likes that kind of like the prototype. They let Burton walk, brought Granson in, same situation, like I said. And the usages that Wentz uses, like what Wentz does with tight ends. It's I doubt that I'll have any Granson. If in leagues I have Taxi Squad and I can get Granson for free, I'm going to throw him on there more times than not, but definitely leaning Mo Alley-Cox in this whole situation. I did do a little research on Jack Doyle, where he was actually the 6th worst tight end in run to pass usage since 2018 to 2020. So the top 6 guys that are on the field more passing than they are running. So Eifert, Gesicki, Ebron, Cook, Ingram are guys that had over 68% of their time on the field was in passing downs. And then guys that were only on the field pretty much for running or for rushing downs was Doyle, Darren Fells, Nick Vannett, Jonnu Smith, Josh Hill, and Nick Boyle. So that's kind of the company he's in.
Wow.
I think they're using him more as that run blocking tight end. Even though he's getting some receptions, they're not going to be what Mo Alley-Cox is going to get him. Like they're more downfield and actually scoring fantasy points.
One thing I'll add to Mo Alley-Cox in terms of the upside that this guy has. So I knew that he had a very strong basketball background and that he took I thought he took like 3 years off from football. I was wrong. So when he was an undrafted free agent signed by the Colts in 2017, he hadn't played football since 2008. The guy took 9 years off from organized football. From freshman year of high school until 2017, he didn't play football. He was exclusively focused on basketball, and he's a pretty good basketball player. So I think that shows you kind of the upside there, that this guy has been an undrafted free agent and has kind of made a name for himself now where he does get that 2nd-round tender. And if you want a list of tight ends with basketball backgrounds that have kind of exploded, I mean, we're talking like Antonio Gates, Jimmy Graham. There's a notable list of guys that come out of nowhere where they didn't have the college football background. So I'm not saying he's going to be those guys, but they have something in common. So,
but you're not saying he's not.
I didn't say that yet.
That's a very, very interesting take on the Mac, I guess, that's been in the cave for a while. So that wraps up the Colts. We'll now move on to another team in the AFC South, the Jags. So we'll kick off with the Jags. I know the Jags are a firm favourite of yours, aren't they, Josh? A few of their guys on there, I'm sure we'll touch upon very soon. And we'll kick off with the questions again with yourself, Ali.
So just interested to get your take on where Trevor Lawrence sits in your dynasty rankings. Are you happy to take him in the first round of a Superflex dynasty startup? So his current ADP is the quarterback 8. He's currently going at 109 in dynasty startups.
Cody, you have any strong thoughts? I mean, I think that's right. The quarterback position's so tough because it's clear like there's like Mahomes, Prescott, Murray, Allen, Herbert, Russ, and then after that it's like Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, kind of like all these guys where there's like a touch of hesitancy that they'll be a starting quarterback like 3 years from now. But I mean, I think that's about right. Like I don't have any strong feelings on that. I think there's just kind of this tier of like the semi-mobile to very mobile quarterbacks where there's at least job security the next like 2-3 seasons.
Yeah. I can't push back really on much of that. That's the same. That's like a Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow area. I think you'd prefer Prescott over him. But the age gap could push some people towards Trevor Lawrence. I mean, there's not a lot of argument for me for having Trevor Lawrence that high. I'd obviously love to have at least seen some of him play in the NFL before I draft him in the Dynasty League in a startup that early. But, I mean, you're not going to catch much argument from me from one of the best quarterbacks we've seen come out.
He also has really good weapons. It's the same reason why I like Trey Lance a little more than Justin Fields, is that even if in a vacuum I might prefer Justin Fields, all else equal, if you just look at the weaponry, Trevor Lawrence has really good weapons that he's walking into with day one. He's got Etienne, who's an elite running back talent and incredible in the passing game, which is what you want as a rookie quarterback. He also happened to play with him for 3 seasons in college, so that gets Trevor Lawrence nice and comfortable. We got the shower narrative. We all think James Robinson is kind of a good running back, so he's got a high-quality backup running back there as well. And then the skill position core, DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, those are 3 really good options. Oh,
there's one more guy there.
Is this Colin Johnson?
No, Tim Tebow, bro.
Tim Tebow, who has the number 1 selling jersey in the NFL right now, could still get cut, so that's exciting.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, he's walking into some pretty good weapons. And I know, like, there's the worry that Urban Meyer's just an absolute idiot and is going to ruin things, but, I mean, there's not really much precedent for such a talented roster and then having a coach be so terrible that everyone is just atrocious for fantasy. I'm not aware of any precedent for that, honestly. I think that's just narrative driven. And I mean, we don't really care if the team wins or loses games. So if Urban Meyer mismanages something, I mean, that doesn't affect us in fantasy. We just want Trevor Lawrence getting his yards and touchdowns. I don't see why he's not going to get that. So yeah, I think QB8, sure. I'm not excited about that. I'm not completely avoiding him. This is a great prospect with a good skill player set around him.
Yeah, I think for me on this one, it's him or Herbert that are the closest in rankings in my eyes. I think you've got Herbert who's proven it as a rookie. You've got Lawrence that's got a better college profile. You can't go wrong with either of them, but I think they're the closest to in the rankings in my eyes. So we'll move on to the running backs. I kind of know the answer to this question, but I'll fire it away anyway. I want to get you guys' takes on my thoughts on Travis Etienne. I've currently got him ranked as a top 10 dynasty running back, and I know where he's ranked on playerprofile.com as well, so I won't spoil it for the audience just yet. I just want to know where he ranks for you guys in relation to the last 3 running back classes, 2019 to 2021, and just to give a bit of context on Etienne, he's currently going as a running back 19 in dynasty startups in the 5th round, which I think is absolute criminal. I
mean, yeah, that just makes me angry. RB 19, are you kidding me? who are the 18 running backs you'd rather have? The guy's 23, and I'll just repeat these numbers. I talked about it on my last Codebreaker podcast. A running back rush attempt on average over the past 5 seasons, if I comb through play-by-play data, generic running back rush attempt is 0.6 fantasy points. Generic running back target, 1.53. So essentially a running back target scores 2.5 times the amount of fantasy points as a running back rush attempt. And what are we sure more than anything that Travis Etienne's going to get? The running back targets. He could actually get only 10 carries a game. And if he's getting 5 to 6 targets a game, he's going to outscore the Nick Chubbs of the world. And this guy's 22 years old. So it's so hard to see Etienne fail. I mean, we saw Nyheim Hines be an RB2, and he barely touched the ball. And it's because he got the kind of touches that are good for fantasy. He got the targets. So, I mean, I could go on and on about how it's a dream landing spot in my eyes, and Travis Etienne just has no path to failure. But, yeah, I think that illustrates it right there. It's just that the game we play with fantasy, you want the RB targets.
Yep, 100% on that. And when you even look at the last 3 classes, like you mentioned, I'm taking him over everybody from 2019, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs. And then last year, the only guy that I'm really going to take over Etienne is Jonathan Taylor from Athletic and just from he's the best running back I've seen I think he's the best running back we've all seen in a while. But I think it's Taylor and then Etienne. And for those reasons, like he's going to Jacksonville with his old quarterback from Clemson. What's not to love about that? Josh just laid it all out there. He could literally push 100 targets, I think, pretty easily in 17 games. And even if he's only at 150 carries, that's a lot of upside. That's a ton of upside, no matter where those routes are, what. But and then from James Robinson's standpoint, his contract is up after 2022. So it's not like he's locked in, going to split carries for the next 4 or 5 years. Like an undrafted contract, he's a restricted free agent in 2023. I think it's wheels up for Travis Etienne, and RB19 is absolutely ridiculous to me. Like you're in the Austin Eckler area behind Aaron Jones. I mean, then Javonte Williams, who's sitting there with Melvin Gordon, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders. That's that area for me, and I'm taking Etienne over all those guys pretty easily.
Yeah, so I'm going to give a little spoiler since I just finished up full projections for all these players. So I'm looking at my Etienne projection. I kept it super conservative for round 1. I'll probably bump it up a little bit. But right now I have him at only 38% of the team rushing attempts and only an 11% target share with very average running efficiency and slightly above average receiving efficiency. And with a 38% rush attempt share and 11% target share, we're looking at about 1,150 yards as a rookie and over 200 fantasy points. And, I mean, these are not numbers that are going to blow anybody away at the surface when you're like, oh, 38% of the rushes, 11% target share, that's it? Oh, that is as conservative as you can get it. And the guy's still getting you 210, 215 fantasy points right there. And that's what I'm talking about, where it's just I've started calling it like the Konami code for running backs is getting usage in the passing game. And we don't talk about it enough.
Is that like RB 12-13?
I haven't thrown everybody together yet, but I would guess that it puts him at like RB 20, 15 to 20 for 2021. But in terms of the upside there, he could easily finish as like the RB 8 to 12, even still on pretty limited volume. If that target share is actually more like a Kamara type target share, even if it's below Kamara, even if he's like Kamara's like an 18% target share guy, if he's at like 15% target share, then oh baby. So you know what? We're on the stream. If you get the 15% target share, I now have Etienne projected as like the RB 11. So right there, and that's for 2021. So that's just one little dial, give him a 15% target share instead of 11, which is about what Laviska Shenault had last year. So, yeah, the sky is really the limit for Etienne.
I'm loving this. Yeah, I'm just going to say, Elliot, Terrace Marshall, I'm big on him. Tick. Travis Etienne, I'm big on him. Tick. If we get Laviska Shenault, then I might as well just log off.
Is Etienne your rookie running back one ahead of Najee?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
So just to make sure that we're clear on Najee's landing spot, he's landed with a bottom 5 O-line and a 40-year-old sexual predator quarterback with half an elbow fiber, who is one bad game away from Dwayne Haskins as the quarterback. Just so we're all clear on Najee Harris' landing spot. I get it. He's going to get 300 carries in 2021. Yes, in redraft, I'd rather have Najee Harris, but like the whole team could just completely fall apart in Pittsburgh either during or after this season. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, give me the guy that's tethered to a generational talent for probably his entire career in Travis Etienne for Dynasty.
Yep. Every time.
Indeed. Do you just want to have a quick word on James Robinson, Ali?
Yes, going from a big winner to a big loser, and James Robinson. So, what are you doing with him in Dynasty at the minute? Are you buying him? Are you selling him? Or are you holding him if you have him? His current ADP is RB27 now.
I mean, if you were listening to the Sonic Truth podcast, they've been telling you to sell him since November. It was like get him early, August, September, use him up, sell him December, late November, and I traded him about a month before the draft. I got Brandon Ayuk straight up. I had to give up a 3rd-round pick with Robinson to get Ayuk. Loved that every time. And I mean, at this point, if you still have him, I think you got to hold him. But I hope you got out while you could.
I've got a question. Are we allowed to curse on this show?
I mean, it's for charity, so maybe not.
All right, I won't curse then. But his Dynasty ADP, he's the RB27. Are you freaking kidding me? The team just took a round 1 running back. Like, what the heck are you doing, Dynasty gamers? RB27, there's 32 teams in the NFL. Like, what? You're taking James Robinson over so many guys that are probably going to be either the starting running back or a 1A, 1B in a committee who have a path to a potential starting role. James Robinson has no path to any starting role as long as Etienne's healthy and he's in Jacksonville for at least the next 2 years. What are we doing, people? RB27, get out of here. That is the stupidest ADP I've seen in who knows how long. If that's his current price still, I would sell him. Oh my God. You're telling me that I can sell him for like sort of a starting running back at RB27? Sell. If that's really where he's going, I can't believe it. I mean, people are still taking him on underdog in best ball drafts in like the 6th, 7th round.
I was just gonna say I did that draft on Tuesday night and he went 7.8 ahead of Trey Sermon, ahead of Fournette, Mostert, Damian Harris, Melvin Gordon, Tony Pollard.
I have never seen more of a backup running back than I have with James Robinson. I mean, the team took a round 1 running back. No one's out there like, oh, like Benny Snell might be more relevant this year or Anthony McFarland. No, the team took a round 1 running back. They like James Robinson so much that they spent 1st-round draft capital on the same position to make sure James Robinson touched the ball less. What are we doing, people? I'm shaking my head right now. Like, that's just like, what? RB27?
Yeah, I think we'll move on from a guy that you guys hate. We all hate J-Rob, to be fair. It's very apparent. There's take lock in the community, isn't there, that people are still taking him where they are. But we'll move on to a guy that I'm pretty confident we'll all be higher on. He's my Jags wide receiver 1, Laviska Shenault. I just want to get your thoughts on if you're worried about the rumours that there was interest in Kadarius Toney and what actually do you think we can expect from Shenault in 2021 and beyond. And just to give context, he's going as a wide receiver 34. And he had a fantastic breakout rating, wide receiver 2 from last year's class, which is extremely similar to studs like Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb that go in top 10 in Dynasty.
I'll jump in quick because I know Josh has some takes on Laviska. I love Laviska Shenault. He is built directly after A.J. Brown, bigger size, Deebo Samuel, that same role. We know he was injured last year at the Combine. I don't know if he was ever really fully healthy during the NFL season, and I think this getting a full offseason is only going to help him. Getting a new, better quarterback. I know we all love Minshew, but Trevor Lawrence obviously is better than Gardner Minshew. And really just the offense elevating around him. The offensive line got better, has been getting better the last 3 years. I don't see how he isn't a buy right now. I don't know where he's going off right now. Looks like the 9th round. Yeah. I love that area. I mean, you're looking at Rashad Bateman. You're looking at Tyler Lockett, guys in that same area. Deebo Samuel is actually in that area. I love Laviska Shenault right there. I think that's a good spot for him. I'll kick it to Josh because I know he's got some heat on Laviska Shenault. He just did a show, I think, 3 weeks ago on Shenault?
It was more than that. I don't remember. It could have been like 2 months ago.
Oh, that was your second show. Yeah.
That was my second podcast ever, solo pod. I did it on Shenault. So I'm looking at my projections for this next year, and I have Shenault projected 3rd on the team in target share. I gave the edge to Chark and Marvin Jones just because these are more complete route tree kind of guys. It's all very similar. It's kind of like a big 3 there in the receiving game. But the thing is, because of the type of targets Shenault gets, if you're playing a PPR league, he's right there with DJ Chark this season in terms of his type of output. Because remember, DJ Chark he's never going to be like a 70% catch rate kind of guy with the routes he runs. But Laviska Shenault can be a 70 to 75% catch guy with the routes he runs. And that's what you really want in PPR, is you want the guy that's going to be easily getting 70 to 80 catches a season at least. And that's what I have for Shenault. I have him around 75 to 80 catches this next year, fairly low yards per reception. Also get some rushing attempts. But the thing with Shenault is very limited intermediate and deep targets as a rookie. However, he had one of the highest in the entire NFL yards per target when he was targeted not in the short passing game. And that kind of shows you that the potential's there and that this is actually a much more nuanced route runner than people give him credit for. This guy was insanely productive in college. He had one of the best sophomore receiving seasons per game that I've ever seen. And people don't talk about that for some reason because the next year he was sort of injured for a lot of the season. But, I mean, this is an elite talent. He's basically I'm trying to remember who gave me this comp. So I was talking with someone on the Twitter timeline 2 days ago, and they said A.J. Brown and Deebo Samuel had a child. And I think that's a great way to put it because he's more versatile and more nuanced as a route runner than Deebo in terms of where he can be used. But he's not like the full-blown alpha that A.J. Brown is. So that's why I would take him over Deebo Samuel in a startup. I think they're going similar spots because there's just more upside there because Shenault has demonstrated in college and in the NFL that if you give him a more diverse route tree, he can handle that. And when you're 6'2", 225, I mean, who wants to cover that? He's got 30 pounds on every cornerback. I love Laviska Shenault.
Yeah, who's going to stop him as well?
Just a quick follow-up. What are you both doing with DJ Chark? I think is he entering his final year of his contract in Jacksonville? What are you both doing with Chark?
I'm holding him. I'm probably not buying any of him, but I'm holding him definitely just because we know Justin Ross, T. Higgins, what Trevor Lawrence does with those big guys on the outside that are fast. I'm just going to really lean into that. If I have Chark, I have him in a couple spots, but I'm not buying. I'm holding.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat where I'm sort of holding. I will say, though, just to plug the mental health aspect of this, I know we're doing this all for charity. DJ Chark recently went public with a lot of his mental health struggles where he struggled with anxiety and depression. And, I mean, that just goes to show that, like, we need to destigmatize it. And people often think, like, oh, you're depressed, you're on the couch. You know what? DJ Chark is an elite athlete in the prime of his career. So he kind of shows that, like, a lot of the stereotypes that some people might have, it's like, oh, like, this person, like, didn't want to go outside today because they were so depressed. You know what? That couldn't be further from the truth. There's just, like, there's such a wide spectrum of it. And it also kind of points out that, like, everyone is susceptible to mental health issues. It's not just like oh, you weren't where you wanted to be in life kind of thing. Like DJ Chark's at the pinnacle of his sport in the prime of his career and still struggles with it. So it kind of shows like it can hit anyone and that it's not like a choice where no one's like, oh, you know what? I chose to be depressed today. That like this really is a mental health issue where it can just hit anyone and can be so debilitating. So I think it's kind of interesting that we got the Jags and Chark for that as he goes public this week with it all. So props to him.
Yeah,
he's a hold.
It's fantastic to mention that regarding Chark, and it just shows that it can affect anybody, no matter what you do, where you live, who you are, what support you've got. It can affect anybody, and that is what the Streamathon's all about: raising awareness, raising funds for supporting mental health, because it affects a lot of us, and it's affecting more of us in the current global pandemic. And there's things like increasing suicide rates, and we really need to do something to really help and sort of get just make everyone better, I guess, and open up more. So yeah, that was a serious part of the pod. Of the Streamathon. We'll finish with a lighter note, a quick take on a tight end at the Jags.
Yeah. So who do you guys see being the Jags' number one tight end in this season 2021? Is there really any chance that it's going to be Tebow time? I think it's quite hilarious. He actually has an ADP of tight end 42.
This is a joke, maybe. I mean, it's
is that actually his ADP?
Yeah. It's amazing. Fastest selling jersey.
The same people that bought the jerseys, yeah.
I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do with that information. I'm going to do nothing with it other than maybe add Luke Farrell, who I looked at as a blocking tight end out of Ohio State this last year. Ohio State, I'm going to connect my dots here. He went to Ohio State. Urban Meyer coached at Ohio State. Boom. Luke Farrell is now the tight end one for Jacksonville until they trade for Zach Ertz or something like that. Or maybe they just don't use a tight end because it's – who knows, man? Maybe that's just not what they're going to do. And they look at Tim Tebow as like, hey, maybe if he comes in and he's still decently athletic, we can use him on the field as a blocker or whatever they want to do. But I have no desire to touch Tim Tebow, truthfully.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the Jags offense, you've got Chark, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault. They're on the field. ETN's on the field. And then why isn't that fifth guy, James Robinson? We got some split backs going on. Or just running out 4 wide receiver sets and throw Colin Johnson out there. I mean, those are both better options than Tim Tebow. And I know people are like, oh, like tight ends come out of nowhere, Logan Thomas, Darren Waller. Just so everyone understands Tebow's backstory, the guy ran a 4.7, which isn't anything too special. It's not like Darren Waller running a 4.4 and then converting to tight end. He ran a 4.7, and that was 11 years ago. Tim Tebow's 33. This isn't some like 26-year-old guy that's converting. He's 33. You want to know what he did the last 5 years to stay in football shape? He stood in the outfield and was terrible at minor league baseball. That is not a way to keep your body in football shape, to be a left fielder in the minors. I really just don't know what we're doing with Tim Tebow. Like this guy is clearly not in football shape. He's 33. Imagine all the guys that are withering away in the NFL in their early 30s who have been playing the sport this whole time. Tim Tebow is relearning football at 33. Like, why ADP 42?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Do you know? I literally, so the last time Tebow played was 2012 with the Jets. I was thinking about Andrew Luck the other day and how he was drafted in 2012, and he had an entire 6-year career, and then retired, and now Tim Tebow's back, and it's like, full circle. Where it's like, all right, I'm just gonna see you later in 8 years, come back and play tight end. Okay. But
I thought you were about to go with the conspiracy that they're the same person or something.
Good. I mean, if you want to.
I love that. I think what we all need is James Robinson to convert to tight end so he makes the team. But yeah, just that wraps up the Jags, and it wraps up our hour with you guys talking AFC South. So first, just thank you for coming on to the Streamathon. Really appreciate it. Two of the most knowledgeable guys in the community. So big thank you to you for that. And just tell the audience about where they can find you and anything you've got coming up in the near future.
You can find me on Twitter at JLarkyTweets, JLARKY tweets. And we've got our Roto Underworld world famous draft kit coming out at the end of this month. So if you just go to playerprofiler.com/draft kit, you can find that there. We already have some best ball rankings up. We're going to add full redraft rankings very soon. All of my projections for every single player will be up very, very soon in the next week and a half. So be on the lookout for that.
Indeed.
You can find me on Twitter at Carpentier NFL. Same on Patreon, Carpentier NFL. Most of my work is on Patreon or on playerprofiler.com, working on the Roto Underworld Twitter account and stuff like that, writing a few articles on Player Profiler. Other than that, appreciate you guys having me on. Appreciate you having us on. It was a blast talking Jags and Colts, so we appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
Very
thank
well
you
having
guys.
you on. Loved it.
Yeah. Thanks again for giving us your time, and we've everybody's got more knowledgeable with having you on, so I can now go and buy some Paris Campbell.
There we go.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.
Right, Ali, I'm going to be leaving you in a moment, so we'll bring back in the man from Sheffield, Matt. Here he is. So I'm going to dip out now. We're going to wrap up the AFC South. We've got a couple of fantastic guests coming on to discuss the Texans and Titans. So I'll dip out and enjoy the next hour, lads.
Absolutely. See you later, Kev.
See you in a bit, Kev.
Yeah, so as Kev just mentioned, we're going to move on to the second half of the AFC South and wrap up this third part of the Streamathon. We're going to be talking about the Texans and the Titans. And as Kev just mentioned, we've got two fantastic guests coming on. They're both contributors for Yards Per, and they're also the co-hosts of Fantasy Playmakers. So I'd like to welcome Jeremy, who you can follow on Twitter at PopesFFH, and Ryan, whose Twitter is at Mackie_FFB. Here we go. How you both doing, guys?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank
Good,
you.
thank you.
We're how far are we now, Ali? We're getting close to that 12-hour mark. I think we're at 11 hours now. So it's
hour 11. Yeah.
It's been a grueling one, but we're excited to have you both on. We're hoping you can bring that bit of energy if we start to struggle. I know you're both really into obviously the fantasy football side of things, and as I mentioned with the podcast you both host. Yeah, it's gonna be fun to chat to you both.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hour 11 is pretty impressive. I'm surprised you guys are still awake, if I'm being truthfully honest. But
it's been a grueling one, but it's all for a good cause, so it's worth it. So we'll kick things straight off and move into the Texans. Ali, do you want to fire off your first question?
Yeah, we'll start with a bit of a spicy one. So I just want to know what you guys are doing with Deshaun Watson in Dynasty if you own him. Are you selling him now and getting rid of him, or are you happy to hold him? Is he also for you, is he a target to buy low? So his current ADP is now the QB 15.
yeah, I mean, it's tough for me. I personally would probably move on at this point. I just feel like everything the Texans are doing are kind of screaming that, at least for this year, that he may not be playing football. I think it's tough, though, because I think everybody knows that now. So, like, his value is really plummeted. So unless I'm getting something decent, I feel like it's just like you got to hold him and hold on and hope that what has come out isn't totally true and that he does get a chance to play again. Because, I mean, for the last 3 years, he's been a top 10 quarterback. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm
Ryan,
looking to hold
what's
him.
your feelings on it?
Yeah, I'm looking to hold him as well, buying low if I can. So if somebody wanted to give up or take a mid to late round first for him, I'd be willing to do that. I mean, he's everything that I've seen. The accusers and his team are all looking to settle things outside of court. They're trying to work things out, and The way it's looking right now, it looks like Houston's probably going to move on from him. I mean, I think they've signed or drafted 3 QBs so far this offseason. So my assumption would be that if he does play and he's not suspended for the whole season, he's probably gone from there anyways. And if he, I mean, I think he upgrades no matter where he goes from here. I mean, Houston's receiving core, which we're going to talk about, is just kind of a crapshoot. So, I mean, anywhere he goes, if he goes to Denver or anything like that, I mean, that's a huge upgrade for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an awkward situation to be in if you've got Deshaun Watson. Obviously, there's all that uncertainty as we lead into the new season. I think there's definitely potential to buy him low, but I mean, it's tough. The price you've got to pay, it's a price that you pay for a starting quarterback. So you either need to be a team that's maybe rebuilding and just looking for that value. Otherwise, as I say, it's a really tough situation. And yeah, Ali, what's your feelings?
I was literally about to say, if you were rebuilding, is he a good buy for you? With thoughts of he could potentially start again in maybe 2022 and sit this year. Would you do that? And with the knowledge that he could sit for at least a year?
I would say possibly. I just feel like with what the value you're going to have to give to him, like Matt had said, I mean, you're paying for a starting quarterback who has top 5 potential. So if I own him, I'm not necessarily like giving him away, like Ryan said, for like a late first. Like I just am going to sit there and be like, okay, is it Deshaun Watson or Jalen Waddle? Like I'm going to sit and hold Deshaun Watson, especially in like a super flex league where quarterbacks are so hard to come by. So as a rebuilding team, I feel like I'd have to give up so much that I could also use to get other assets to rebuild quicker. So I just feel like Watson's just really, it's like one of the toughest situations right now in fantasy football because he's worth a gold mine if he plays. It's just, does he ever play again? So it'd be too risky for me personally, but there's definitely a window if you're willing to take that risk. I mean, Watson's the cheapest he'll ever be. So,
yeah. Ryan, what's your feelings?
Well, I was just curious. So, Jeremy, I know you said you're a little hesitant if you're a rebuilding team, but say if you're sitting at like the 102 or 103 spot and somebody came up trying to trade up and offered you Watson for the 102 or 103, is that something you'd be willing to do as a rebuilding team? That maybe you have a top 5 quarterback you already know you're going to be bad next season, so maybe if you're willing to take the risk and move on from him for 2021 and just kind of punt it for that year and then have him for 2022 and on, would you be willing to do that?
Personally, no, because I look at it as in like this quarterback class is much better than next year's. And I'll tell you that right now. The next year you have Spencer Rattler and you have Sam Howell. And then after that, it's dicey, at least at the moment. I mean, someone could emerge, but for me, I'd rather take my risk at Trey Lance or Justin Fields or Zach Wilson if I'm rebuilding and I need that. I don't know. It's just really sticky.
That's what I'm saying, though. If you know that he's not going to be suspended past this season, you know your team probably isn't going to be very good now. So why take the chance? Why not get a proven NFL asset right now for 2022 and punt that draft position next year and still have a top value pick for one of those top running backs that are coming out next year or wide receivers that are coming out next year?
I mean, I guess if you knew he wasn't going to be suspended next year, you know what I mean? Like if I know that, I feel like the person who also is trading him is going to know that, and they're not going to give him up for just 1-2.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I could be wrong. I mean, it
no,
could happen
I hear you, I hear you. But if they said, "Hey, I'll give you Watson for your 102 or 103 right now," I think I would take it. To be honest with you, I think I'd probably take the chance and just be bad next year and have Watson and whatever else for the following year.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question because, as you say, we're talking about Trey Lance and Justin Fields, but we know Deshaun Watson, he can be that top 5 quarterback. When you're talking about those 2 rookies, that's what you're hoping they are. So, I mean, it's even the proven commodity in having Deshaun Watson, or it is getting those rookies. But as Jeremy said, I think it's just that uncertainty. We don't know 100% facts, do we, that he's going to play in 2022. We don't know how the situation is going to play out. For all we know, it could even come in 2021, depending on how everything goes. So it is just a really awkward situation, a really sticky situation to be in. But as you say, that was a great question, Ryan, because as I say, that's the ceiling that we're hoping for these rookies. So yeah, great point. So we'll move on to the running back position, and the guy I thought we'd talk about a little bit was David Johnson. It appears to me that he's arguably going to be the workhorse, I think, in 2021. And they've obviously just brought in those two veterans in Mark Ingram and Philip Lindsay. Do you feel that is a concern in any way to David Johnson, or what's your feelings on this backfield?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a concern, and the only reason I think so is, I mean, David Johnson's turning 29. He looked good last year. However, I still feel like Philip Lindsay's got some left in the tank. I feel like this year Melvin Gordon kind of came in. They paid him a lot of money, and they wanted to use him, which worked fairly well for them. But Philip Lindsay's had 2,000-yard seasons. I mean, he's finished top 20 in fantasy for PPR, at least, in the past 2 seasons, not 2020, but I feel like Philip Lindsay could maybe make a push. I think all 3 will be used, and I think it's going to turn into a pretty sticky situation, kind of. But David Johnson looked good last year, so if he can kind of hold him off, I think. But I think it's more going to be like a 1-2 punch, like a 1A, 1B with David Johnson and Philip Lindsay, and they're going to use Mark Ingram in like maybe a short yardage kind of, or just like a spell guy for one of those said players.
Brian, what's your feelings?
So is David Johnson already 29, or is he going to be 29 this season? I have it in my notes he's going to be 30. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think he is 29.
I think he's
not
currently
sure when he
29.
turned 30. Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely getting on there in age.
Yeah, and he's never had back-to-back seasons with 150 or 150 carries. So he's one of those guys that they're probably going to give him the early down work. I'm sure they're going to give him. I'm sure he'll get the first carry of the year as long as he's healthy. But I feel like he's just going to be – I feel like Mark Ingram's probably going to get the goal line work, probably get the short yardage work. But he did get some momentum going at the end of last season. I mean, he averaged like 7 yards a carry over the last 3 games, 130 scrimmage yards at the end of last year. So if he's able to carry that momentum into next season, then, yeah, I could see him just being better than Lindsay and Ingram and just letting him stay on the field. But – I feel like you don't bring those guys in, especially a guy like Mark Ingram, for no reason, especially on a team that's not very good. You're not gonna be winning a title anytime soon. You definitely didn't go there to win a title. He's gonna go there probably with the promise that he's gonna get some run. So as a workhorse, no, I can't see him being a workhorse back just because he doesn't have that history or that pedigree of being a workhorse back outside of his sophomore season, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting situation because obviously we know David Johnson, he's arguably the receiving back at least on this team. We know what he can do in the receiving game. Philip Lindsay has next to no receptions really. I'm just looking at the stats, and he had 14 targets last year, 48 the year before. So he's not really somebody that's utilised a lot in the passing game. So I just think with David Johnson, he has that rushing ability, and then with the receiving on top, I probably view it, as you say, I do think there's going to be a bit of a committee, but for me, it's David Johnson that's arguably going to get the receiving work. I'm not sure, Ali, what's your feelings on it?
Yeah, much like you've all said, really, David Johnson's going to be the leader of a committee here. They're all going to have a role. And Philip Lindsay, we've not got his current ADP on here, but I think he's really interesting as a really late dart throw. I think he brings a lot of juice to that team that could be fairly slow in the running back room. He was good for a couple of seasons in Denver. So he does interest me as a really, really late sleeper.
Yeah, and just going back quickly to David Johnson, his ADP is the running back 39. Does that not interest either of you guys when we're talking about David Johnson?
No, I mean, I'm in on David Johnson there. I think, honestly, in a couple of my startups I did this year, I honestly took David Johnson and Philip Lindsay because I agree, like you had said, Matt, I think David Johnson will see more of the third down work and the passing because, I mean, he's proven that. I mean, he has 241 receptions with over 2,500 yards receiving, and he averages almost over 10 yards a catch. So I think he's kind of going to be that. If he like loses gas, he'll still have that PPR value because I feel like he'll be the third down guy, and Lindsay and Ingram will split like the 1-2, or it'll be just Lindsay on the first and second down. So I like David Johnson there, especially because say you grab that first running back early and then you just load up on receivers. This is a good guy that could be the workhorse, like you had said, if he really stays healthy, and he looked good last year. If he continues to look that way, he could have like a 70-30 split there. And as a second running back, I think he definitely can finish top 24. So I like him at running back 39 for sure.
Yeah,
you also look at the quality. They've got a wide receiver and tight end. It's not exactly filled with quality, is it? So David Johnson could get a lot of targets this year.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll move on then, and we'll go to the wide receiver position. Ali, what's your question for the guys?
Yeah, so it brings us on nicely to talk about Brandon Cooks. He's undervalued in my eyes. His current ADP is wide receiver 45. So does this represent good value for you guys? Is it about where you'd expect him to be drafted?
Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I love Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 45 personally. I mean, this guy's got over 110 targets, 65 catches, 1,100 yards in 4 of his last 5 seasons. I mean, if he's healthy, he's consistently a wide receiver 2. I think a lot of people, he has like this weird injury-prone tag on him for some reason, but I think it's mainly because he just has concussion issues for some unknown reason. But seemed to stay relatively healthy last year. Not really a whole lot of competition, obviously, in Houston. I mean, they have Randall Cobb and Kiki Cutie, who showed flashes at times throughout his career. But, I mean, Andre Roberts and Dante Moncrief, who's only played in 13 games the last 2 years. So, I mean, he's the number 1 alpha receiver going into the year. I mean, Nico Collins, who we're talking about in a minute, is obviously a guy that I see could possibly take over that role if Cooks is injured, or maybe Cooks takes a step back with his age getting up there a little bit, but he's not even all that old. So I love Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 45, to be honest with you. I feel like if I saw him still sitting there, he's probably gonna make it that far in a draft with me just because I do like him a lot. But if I were to punt on it and I just kind of waited, I would definitely smash him at wide receiver 45.
Yeah, I mean, coming in at wide receiver 45, so let's say that's his ADP. Let's go over what he's finished in his career. 2015, he was 13. 16, he was 10. 17, he was 13. 18, he was 13. 2019, he had the down year in the Rams, which was 62. But then last year, he was 17. I mean, Brandon Cooks is extremely underrated as a fantasy asset, and it's strange because you can't trade him. Like, everybody just thinks Brandon Cooks is bad, but like he consistently has 1,000-yard seasons and just produces. And at 45, I mean, you're getting him as like your 4th or 5th receiver who could end up finishing as your 2nd or 3rd. So I'm all in on Brandon Cooks there.
Is there any concern about the quarterback play in Houston, where it could be Tyrod Taylor or something like that?
I personally don't. Obviously, I'm a Bills fan. I'm up here in Buffalo, so like I've seen Tyrod as he kind of emerged out, and I think Tyrod throws a really good deep ball, and like he doesn't necessarily attack the middle of the field, which where Cooks doesn't always end up. He kind of is like that outside post kind of field stretcher role. So I think Brandon Cooks would do well with Taylor at quarterback, in my opinion, personally. So that doesn't worry me. I think I would be worried about like the rest of the receivers or like the tight ends or even the running backs. Honestly, if Taylor's the quarterback, he might run a little bit more than Watson would. So I think Cooks is safe no matter who the quarterback is personally.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to, as Ryan mentioned, I think that thing that everyone seems to think is injury prone because of the concussions and everything, but when he is on the field, you just said it yourself, Jeremy, is fantastic. So to be able to get him at the wide receiver 45 feels like an absolute steal. It doesn't even matter who's the quarterback for me. I mean, even if you're not a fan of Tyrod Taylor, I still think wide receiver 45, we're talking about some guys that it could easily outproduce in half the games in a season, never mind about a full slate of games. So yeah, definitely a guy that I'd be targeting at that ADP. And we've not even mentioned that Will Fuller's obviously moves on as well from Houston, so potentially opening up even a few more targets for Cooks as well.
Just a really quick one. What would you be prepared to pay for Brandon Cooks in terms of rookie picks?
If I'm sitting there and I'm like, I think I'm one wide receiver like away from really competing, I'd give a late first for him. And that's just because you don't really know what this receiving core is going to be. I think everybody right now thinks with rookie picks, with how well last year's rookies came out and played, that all these rookies are going to hit. And I mean, once you get to like, if you're in a 12-team league, once you're at 10 or 11, especially if it's one quarterback after like the 8th pick, I mean, you're really taking dart throws. I mean, I've seen anywhere from Justin Fields to Michael Carter to Trey Sermon at 1-8. So if someone came up to the plate and really wanted Michael Carter and they're like, I'll give you Brandon Cooks for 1-8, I'd be like, I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like, I'm not that I don't like Michael Carter, but I feel like at giving up 1-8, 1-9 in a 1 QB league for Brandon Cooks, who could possibly finish as a top 15 wide receiver, just to me, I would totally pay that. But I don't know. How do you feel, Ryan?
No, I agree. If the only guys that I'd probably take over him right now are probably obviously Chase and then Devonta Smith and Waddle, and that's probably my cutoff point, to be honest with you. Like any of these other guys, I mean, Bateman, if he would have went to a better landing spot, I probably would have went him purely based off talent. But Elijah Moore at the Jets, wouldn't want him over Cooks. Rondell Moore in Arizona, don't really want him over Cooks at the moment. So if I'm, like Jeremy said, if I'm a win now team, yeah, late first is definitely a price I'd be willing to pay.
Yeah, I just think we're forever the optimists, aren't we? When we come to these rookies, we're all hoping that these amazing players, a little bit how we just spoke about with the quarterbacks when we mentioned Deshaun Watson and then these rookie quarterbacks. If you can move on someone like Cooks, who's constantly a high-end wide receiver 2, even a low-end wide receiver 1, that's basically what you're hoping these rookies are at the end of the first, early second round in rookie draft. So yeah, I think it's a great point to be made. Obviously there's always the age argument that these rookies, they've got that longevity, and as we've just mentioned with the potential concussion concerns with Cooks. But yeah, as you said, Jeremy, if you're a win now team and you're geared up to win, I think that's a move you should definitely be making. Yeah,
I mean, even Cooks is 27. I mean, you get him for 1-8. I mean, he's still got at least 3 years production. So,
absolutely.
I think he feels like he's older. He's been in the league a long time now, so it feels like he's older than 27.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so with that, we'll move on to a guy that we mentioned a little bit earlier, and that's the wide receiver Nico Collins. I'm just interested to know, where does it fit into your rankings now, given we know the landing spot and this potential opportunity that it could have with the Texans?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I was like consensus maybe on Nico Collins before the draft. He definitely rose for me. He was kind of just like a under the radar kind of guy in a Michigan offense that didn't really use him, but his pro day was pretty impressive. He's got good size. I mean, he's 6'4", 215. He's actually the biggest wide receiver in their wide receiver group, I believe, which conveniently, like, their first 6 guys all have a last name that starts with C. So I don't know if it's just kind of their thing now. They're just going to go out and grab all of them. But yeah, he's definitely the biggest guy, and I could see him kind of taking over maybe a red zone type role, which obviously we know as fantasy owners that touchdowns are definitely much more productive than yardage, in my opinion. And I just think that if he does land in like the wide receiver 2 role, I mean, Fuller's leaving behind 75 targets, and Cooks had 103, and that leaves like 215 total to go through these guys. And I mean, he's competing against, like we had said, a 5'10 Randall Cobb, a 5'11 Kiki QT, and then Chris Conley's there. So nobody that's got like a crazy big name. And I think he's a pretty athletic dude, and I think he can definitely possibly win a wide receiver 2 or 3 role on this offense. So I'm all in on Nico Collins for sure. At 3-1 too, which is his rookie ADP, is crazy in my opinion. Ryan?
Yeah, no, I agree. 301 is definitely a little too late for my in my opinion anyways. I had him in like the wide receiver 8 to 10 range. Obviously the guys that I mentioned before, like Chase, Smith, Waddle, Bateman. But I mean, once you get into like the Kadarius Toney, Amon-Ra St. Brown range, I mean, I can have a conversation with just about anybody over if you should take him over either of those 2 guys, despite the draft capital for Toney and Amon-Ra potentially being the number 1 receiver in Detroit. So, I mean, he looked really good at everything that I read about, and from his the Senior Bowl looked really good. Everybody was saying that he was super impressive. He was still a little rusty, obviously, from being off for a year for taking COVID off, but he also, they said that he improved his quickness, improved his route running, and all that stuff. Like, he got better actually not playing football last year, apparently, because he was away from Michigan, and Michigan, for some reason, is no longer able to develop players properly. So he's definitely a buy for me at 301, and he, like Jeremy had said, I could definitely see him being the red zone target. They don't have one of that big body receiver. Cooks isn't really that type of guy, so I could definitely see him, especially if Tyrod's there. I could definitely see Tyrod loving him and being able to just kind of lob the ball up to him and let him go get it, because he's a great 50-50 contested catch guy. I mean, the guys at the Senior Bowl said that he's more of like a 90-10 contested catch guy. So if that's the case, then I'm all over him.
Yeah, Ali, what's your feelings on Nico?
Yeah, I think that's value at the 301. I've seen him taken mid to late second round, which is probably where I'd look to take him. Once you get past the first 3 or 4 picks in round 2, it's really close between all the other guys. So there's not many people with a better path to relevancy than Nico Collins. I think for a quarterback, you got to love playing with a guy like that, where you can just chuck the ball up and you expect him to make the catch 9 times out of 10. So I've got a couple of shares in Nico. I think I'm going to end up with quite a lot of shares. So yeah, you got to hope that he's possibly the number 2 on the team, and definitely like his value here.
Yeah, I'm just interested to know, guys, how much of it is it more opportunity over talent? I mean, if I gave an example and he started the season strong and somebody offered you a 2022 second for him, would you move him for that just because he's got this opportunity, or do you think he is the real deal?
Go ahead, Ryan. I want to think for a second.
Oh, you would. Man. I'm gonna say if he starts off hot, I'm gonna say no, because I believe in his raw talent that he had coming out of college. Like, I think his physical skills, like, he's got a good combination of size and strength and speed. So if he starts off hot, I feel like it's legit. I mean, obviously I would take the cool off period, and if you can sell him high really quick, then yeah, sure, go ahead and sell him high. But for a 22 second, no, I probably wouldn't move him for that if he starts off hot.
Jeremy?
I'm going to agree, I think that Nico Collins, like, he just screams like he has a lot of talent. He does. It's not like we're just, for me, I'm not just pushing Nico Collins up because he landed in Houston. It's not like he's an unathletic guy that, like, okay, he's got a great opportunity, so I'm going to take him in the second round. For me, Nico Collins has talent. So it's talent plus opportunity, and that's what he has. So if they were to pay a first, sure, I'll move him. But for basically, I'm going to take him in the second. So I guess if I took him in the third and they offered me a second, that might be kind of mid, maybe. But I want at least a round ahead of where I took him just to move on from him, because the wide receiver shelf life is just so much longer. And if he's like straight balling out, I'm not moving him just because I'll take it. If he fades out, I mean, it is what it is, but I've made mistakes before. I'll live with it.
No, I definitely agree. I know it was a lot of people were quite high on him. They were saying that Nico Collins was the sleeper out of these wide receivers. So I think a lot of people believed in the talent, and now, as you say, we've got that great opportunity for him as well. So it's all falling nicely for Nico Collins. So going from one rookie, we'll move on to a rookie tight end. You want to talk about, Ali?
Yeah, let's talk about another guy in Brevin Jordan who people were high on pre-draft. He was consensus tight end 2. So we now obviously know his landing spot with the Texans. So are you looking to own any shares of Brevin Jordan? I know there's a bit of a shallow list now of the quality receiving options in Houston. He didn't quite get the draft capital, but are you happy to draft Brevin as your tight end?
Take this one first, Ryan.
Yeah, where he's getting drafted at, yeah, I wouldn't have any problem taking him at the 4th round or whatever it is. I mean, when it comes to these athletic tight ends, I mean, we all know that rookie tight ends very, very rarely hit in the first year or two. But when it comes to a guy that has the yak ability and the athletic potential that Brevin Jordan presents, yeah, I'm definitely want to take a chance on him at his current ADP. I probably want to take him any higher unless it's like a tight end premium league. But where he's currently sitting at, yeah, I mean, Coach David Culley came out and said that he was a no-brainer steal at the draft where they got him at. So, I mean, he's somebody that they obviously like and thought a lot of when it comes to his potential and his skills as a player. And he, I know he fell because he has some injury history, missed 7 games the last 2 years, but I feel like that's something that's just kind of whatever at this point, especially in that late in the draft. You're just kind of drafting for potential and ceiling. And he's definitely one of those guys that has the athletic profile and the production from college. I think he led the nation in yak for tight ends last season or last 2 seasons or whatever. So he's got the potential. He's just got to stay healthy, and we'll go from there.
I'm going to actually say I'd pass on him. The only reason I'm going to say that is I feel like the draft capital worries me. Like, why did so many teams pass on this what seems to be a super athletic yak receiving tight end in a landscape that's definitely not like abundant? Like, not every team has this type of tight end. So what did the NFL see that we didn't see? And I still think like he doesn't have that great of an opportunity. I think that the Texans like Jordan Akins. Last year you saw him kind of take over from Darren Fells. So I feel like Jordan Akins is clearly their starter there. And Kylie Waring is a very good blocking tight end who they have there. So the path for Jordan Akins or for Brevin Jordan is a lot harder, I think, than people actually think on the surface. So I would almost maybe just wait. Like, I wouldn't waste my 4th round pick. Like, I feel like I will take a shot at maybe like Kylan Hill, who fell there, who I really liked before the draft. Or maybe if a player we'll talk about a little later, like Des Fitzpatrick's still on the board, I would rather take a shot at him. Or like an Amir Smith-Marset, who's like a wide receiver that's in Minnesota, I like. And I'll just wait. And most likely Brevin Jordan will probably be cut from whatever fantasy squad drafts him this year by like 2 years from now when he's not fully asserted himself, and maybe take a risk then. Unless if I'm really tight end needy, maybe. But Brevin Jordan kind of something with the draft just kind of disinterests me. I really feel like it's Kyle Pitts, Freiermuth, and Hunter Long, and then Jordan's almost kind of fell to the 4th because obviously I think the NFL just doesn't like something about him. And I don't know if it was injuries and they just didn't get to really like examine them hand on hand because of the COVID off season again that we kind of had. But I don't know. I'm not as high as I was before the draft. That's all.
It's a little bit like how I feel, to be honest. I was really high on Jordan. He was actually my tight end 2 in my rookie rankings before the NFL draft. So obviously to see him slide down in the draft, you've got to react to that, and I think you have to move him down. But as Ryan alluded to a little bit earlier, I think with how slow we know these rookie tight ends can develop, if you're sitting at that fourth round of your rookie drafts, a little bit like what you said, Jeremy, I'm going to be targeting the running backs, wide receivers, and I feel there's more chance of at least one of them hitting or gaining some value at least, and then offering a chance to move on. Whereas if you're taking somebody like Jordan, you're basically you're banking on his talent. That's your commitment to his talent, and there's no way that he's going to increase in value from me unless, as you say, it just explodes onto the scene. But I can't see that happening. And I agree with what you said, Jeremy, about Jordan Akins. I think that they're clearly quite high on him as well. So, yeah, definitely an interesting one. Ali, have you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, it was disappointing in the draft for me. A bit like one of my other pre-draft crushes, Kenny Gainwell. to see him drop that far was just disheartening. I could have seen myself with quite a lot of shares if he got the draft capital, but obviously that the NFL knows something that we don't. So I think I'm just going to avoid anyone past Pat Freiermuth, any of the tight ends after that. I'm not probably interested in drafting in my rookie drafts.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we'll move on to the next team then, and that is the Titans. Ali, what's your first question?
Yeah, so we'll start at the quarterback position. Talk about Ryan Tannehill. So with the loss of the key receiving options for Tannehill, Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis, did this bump Ryan Tannehill down in your dynasty rankings? So his current ADP is a QB 13, so the start of the 3rd round.
I'm going to say no. And this is why. I think that the offense is going to look a lot different than what we are used to seeing in Tennessee. Arthur Smith was obviously always known for 12 personnel and a run-heavy offense. And obviously they didn't lose Derrick Henry, so he's probably going to get used. However, the new OC, who is, I believe it's Todd Doing, right? I think it's Todd. But he ranked 15 in pass attempts when he was the OC in 2017 in Oakland. So I think we might see a little bit more passing, which just alludes to most likely Ryan Tannehill producing more than what he has in the past. His efficiency might go down a little bit, but I think he's going to have more opportunities to produce. And they still have A.J. Brown, who we all know is just a freak out there. So losing Corey Davis and Khalif Raymond doesn't really worry me all that much for Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah. Ryan, what's your feelings?
I was looking at ADPs and things like that, and he probably drops down a little bit for me in terms of being at 13. I feel like I probably have Matt Ryan and Matt Stafford ahead of him, probably Trevor Lawrence too. If in terms of like redraft rankings, if you want to have him up there, I could see an argument for him being higher than that. So I could see him dropping anywhere to the 15 to 17 range. But I do like Ryan Tannehill as a player. But like Jeremy had said, they hired Todd Downing, who's an internal hire, third straight year that they've brought somebody up from their tight end coach to be the offensive coordinator. And the last time he was a coordinator wasn't very impressive in Oakland. I mean, they were 18th in total offense, 16th in passing, 25th in rushing, 23rd in scoring. So, I mean, he wasn't anything to write home about in terms of production when he was in Oakland last. So I think they want to keep the offense generally the same. I mean, obviously they should probably give Derrick Henry a little bit less of a workload at this point. I mean, we'll talk about him in a second, but they're probably going to give him a little bit less to do here. But A.J. Brown, and that's really the only proven guy they have as well. So, I mean, yeah, A.J. Brown's a freak, and he's going to be a top target for me. But it's just I'm not really sure what to expect out of the offense, especially with Todd Downing's offense not really being that productive the last time he was a full-time offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make. I think just with Tannehill, he's always really efficient, isn't he? With the passing attempts he makes. Obviously, we know that this offense it runs through Derrick Henry, but when Tannehill is asked to throw the ball, he's definitely efficient at what he does. And for that, I think he's a really rock solid QB2 to have. He's probably a guy that I wouldn't feel too comfortable with having as my QB1 in Superflex leagues, just because I feel like his upsides it's capped on this offense. And as we say, with it being mainly Derrick Henry being the focal point of this offense. Ali, what's your feelings on Tannehill?
I am concerned about Tannehill. Just they didn't really replace the two guys that they lost, but I'm not a massive Josh Reynolds fan. But I think he's underrated, Tannehill, across the board. I think he's a lot better player than he gets credit for. So he dropped a couple of spaces in my rankings, but he's still at the QB 15. So he's a high-end quarterback too for me.
Yeah, definitely. Where does it sit for you two guys in your rankings? Is it that high-end QB too?
Yeah, I mean, I have him right at. I mean, the only guy that may have jumped him currently probably for me would have been like Lawrence. Yeah. Outside of that, I mean, I like the landing spots for the other guys. I just think that they all have way more like concerns than Tannehill does. So for me, I like him at 13. I think that's a great spot personally. Maybe 14, but right there, I think that's perfect.
Yeah. Do you agree, Ryan?
No, yeah, like I said, anywhere from that QB 15 to 17 range, but I'm not gonna fight anybody if they say that he's 13, 14 or anything like that. I can see an argument either way. I mean, that play action is still gonna be there. He's still gonna be efficient with the football. He's not gonna turn the ball over. So I can see where you guys have him at 12, 13, 14, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's just, as I say, just a really solid quarterback to have. And as a QB2, that's arguably what you're looking for in your quarterback too, just somebody that's safe and you know is always going to be reliable to be that high-end QB2, even a middle QB2. I think that's perfectly acceptable. So with that, we'll move on to the running back position. And now I feel like we seem to say this every offseason, and then Derrick Henry comes back and it makes us all look silly, but we're now at that time where it's time to move on from Derrick Henry. I mean, he's 27. His 2020 offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, he's obviously moved on to the Falcons. Is it finally time to move on, or are we going to look silly again next year?
I'm going to say no. Don't move on. Okay. I think that I feel like I'm okay with letting Derrick Henry retire on my roster. I mean, this guy is just a freak. I think everybody thinks that this is coming, the decline's coming. So again, your value isn't there to really move him. I mean, unless I'm a total rebuild that I know I'm not contending in 2 to 3 years from now, maybe I'll move on. But if I'm a middling team or like a contender, I'm not looking to shop Derrick Henry. I mean, what are you going to upgrade to? He has a top 5 upside, and he's easily a top 12 running back. I mean, do you have any concern that he finishes aside from an injury? I don't see him finishing outside the top 12. And what are you going to get in return for Derrick Henry? No one's going to give you J.K. Dobbins, or no one's going to give you DeAndre Swift or Cam Akers or anybody who is relatively close to possibly reproducing what Derrick Henry has for years, because they know, they're like, okay, he's 27. I mean, when I'm going to buy Derrick Henry, I'm looking to give you like one first, like a late first. Okay, yeah, give me Derrick Henry. I'll take that risk. But I mean, no one's coming at you and giving you this crazy offer usually for Derrick Henry because they know his decline is coming. So I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to let him put up 20 points per game in the playoffs every year and win me a championship again. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And if he retires or he gets hurt and the decline happens, I mean, shame on me, but I think we're all in it to win it. And like, he's like a cheat code in the playoffs, in my personal opinion. He gets better as the year goes on. And I don't know. He's had 300 plus carries for 2 years. I think he doesn't look like he's losing a step, though. You know what I mean? It's not like you're getting like late in the season and you're like, wow, Derrick Henry looks like he's slowing down. He tends to look like he's getting better as the year goes on. So I think they might give him less of a workload, but he might not get 2,000 yards this year. But hey, 1,000 yards and 270 carries, I'm fine with that on my roster.
Ryan, what are you doing if you have Derrick Henry?
So I think Jeremy's got a point where you're kind of at that point in his career where you're either selling him now for a haul in hopes of getting a haul, or you're just letting him die on your bench. Like he's 300 yards or 300 carries, 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns per season the last 3 seasons. I mean, you can't beat that type of consistency. And I mean, their offensive line was middling at best in terms of PFF grades last season. They drafted a tackle in the second round last month. So if their offensive line is even a slightly bit better, I mean, he almost had 1,000 yards before contact last season. So I mean, it's not like he's getting beat up at the offensive line and he's just getting crushed and he's just bowling through people. I mean, yeah, he can do that, but it's not like he's getting hit immediately and having to fight through all this contact and all that stuff, because he only had like 34 broken tackles last season. So it's not like he's getting pounded on every single game with all these carries. I mean, if you see him, he actually gets knocked out of bounds or just something like that from time to time, a lot more often than not. So if I'm a contending team, you're obviously holding him. There's no way you're selling him on a contending team. If you're a middling team, you're probably just going to take the chance that he can will his way to a championship. And if you're a rebuilding team, then you're just hoping for a huge haul, and if you can't get it, then you just let him die on your bench and keep him until he retires. I mean, he just, like Jeremy said, he's guaranteed a top 12 back. There's no way his workload's going to allow that to not happen. So, barring injury, he's there.
Yeah.
Do you have a stat on thrown human beings for stiff arms? Just curious.
He's got to be the leader.
Ryan's the stat guy over at the Fantasy Playmakers. Ryan's like a stat guy, he's got that down. I'm more of the film guy, so I just know that I see a man throwing human beings around. Like, I want him on my roster just purely because of that. Like, I'm gonna make it a statistical category in my home leagues. Thrown humans.
But it was our own player. You can't support that.
It was Josh Norman. Come on, who cares?
He's still in the Bills uniform.
So what? I'm fine with it.
I definitely agree with what you both said. I think if you're a contender and you've got Derrick Henry, you're likely stuck with him now, because you're never going to get back that value that he deserves, really. But it's because everybody's expecting this drop off. And as you say, if you're a contender, I'd rather just hold him and keep riding him, and arguably he's going to keep winning your championship. So yeah, Ali, have you got any final thoughts on Derrick Henry?
Not really. Just repeat the words that you're not going to get the value that you really want for Derrick Henry. So he's a screaming hold. But I will just say that dynasty start, the running back 6 is too high for me. I wouldn't be drafting him as a startup, but as the RB6, that's for sure.
Yeah, Jeremy just mentioned it a little earlier, didn't you, about the guys like that's the area where people like DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, them guys are going around that or after that. So if you're in a draft, I wouldn't be drafting him there. I'd be grabbing that value on guys like Swift and Akers.
Or even Chubb, you know what I mean? If you're in a startup.
Yeah.
I mean, Chubb's falling crazy far, and I think I don't know why. I think it was maybe the injury, but like I'd take Nick Chubb over Derrick Henry in a startup for sure. So I think his
Chubb's basically just Derrick Henry anyway, isn't he? He's just a few years younger.
For sure.
Yeah. So with that, we'll move on to a wide receiver you want to talk about, Ali?
Yes, I think it's someone that we all love and have ranked really high. So it's AJ Brown. So it's just interested in where you guys have him ranked in your dynasty rankings. And do you see him finishing as a top 8 wide receiver in 2021? So just for context, he finished as a wide receiver 12 in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take this one first. I personally am going to be on maybe the outliers. I know a lot of people have him as wide receiver 1 as far as dynasty goes, but I'm going to say he's top 5. I personally don't think he's wide receiver 1. I just feel like the offense, I still don't know what it's going to be. I mean, obviously he has the opportunity. Nobody's around there. But they added Josh Reynolds. They do bring in Des Fitzpatrick, who I like. So, like, I just feel like if you factored in, like, how many targets is he really going to get? I mean, he had, like, almost 100 last year. So, like, do we see that he's going to get, like, the crazy Devontae Adams or Michael Thomas numbers that are, like, mid 150, 70? You know what I mean? Like, is he going to be that high? Like, if he is, I mean, maybe. But I just feel like he's another guy that he's for sure top 8 this year. I think his opportunity is just too great and his talent's immense. So, but there's like guys that I like ahead of him. And that's maybe just personal preference. Like, I'm not going to argue that if you have him at wide receiver 1, that's fair. I think he's definitely, like I said, top 5 for me.
Yeah. Ryan, what's your feelings on AJ Brown?
So I personally love AJ Brown. I mean, people had DK Metcalf as a debatable dynasty wide receiver 1 after last season already, and AJ Brown is, 122 catches, 2,126 yards, 19 touchdowns, 17.4 yards per catch last 2 seasons in only 30 games. I mean, he's a freak, and I know the offense doesn't really support that type of receiver all that often, but I mean, we're adding another game. He's the only true proven weapon that's there. And, I mean, he could see if they even become slightly pass happier. I mean, they were 30th in pass ratio last season, less than 50%. They're at 48. So, I mean, if they even become 50-50, he could easily see that 120, 125 target range. And with his production that he has, I mean, that he could easily finish as a wide receiver 1, especially if – and I always – have to consider the fact that Devontae Adams might not have Aaron Rodgers this year. So, I mean, that knocks him out of there. Michael Thomas doesn't have Drew Brees thrown to him anymore. I don't think anybody had him up there anyways anymore. DK Metcalf, I mean, we saw what happened the second half of last year with him. So, I mean, Tyreek Hill, yeah, I can see him being wide receiver 1 because of having Mahomes. But, I mean, who else would you trust in terms of talent-wise outside of maybe Hill and Brown if Rodgers isn't in Green Bay anymore and Michael Thomas doesn't get the target share that he's been getting the last few years?
No, absolutely. I think a lot of us are quite high on AJ Brown. The thing for me is, I don't know how you approach your startups, but in startups, it's probably a guy I'm not going to have any shares in because I tend to go in Superflex leagues. You're going for 1 quarterback, 2 quarterbacks, and at least 2 running backs early on. So if he's going at that round 3 capital, I just don't think I'm going to have any shares because I'm just a guy that's not going to target a wide receiver in that area. What are you two the same? Do you target running backs and quarterbacks first, or are you one of the guys that are happy to take a shot on a wide receiver?
Yeah, I'm definitely quarterback, running back,
yeah.
Or quarterback, depending on where I am. Usually the late rounds, I'll go quarterback, because I know that another one's not really falling. But yeah, I mean, I'd rather take the little bit of the dip and take like a Diggs or a Calvin Ridley in round 4, late 4, or early 5. So I think, because personally I'm high on those two too. So
yeah.
I love it. I just don't have any shares of AJ Brown, like you said, because of how high he's going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Ryan, what's your approach?
I almost always go quarterback in Superflex leagues, especially if I'm in the back end of the draft. If I can get a guy like Herbert and Burrow at the turn or something like that, I will always do that. And then I usually take a running back in the 3rd. So wide receiver is something that's so deep that I'm willing to punt on. So I agree that I'm probably not going to have a whole lot of shares of him in terms of startup value, but if I can find somebody that's willing to trade me him, I will. But no, I agree. Startups, I'm probably not going to have a whole lot of shares of them.
Yeah, Ollie, I know you're probably the same, aren't you, in regards to getting the quarterbacks and running backs?
Yeah, definitely. The quarterbacks in Superflex are king, so grab them early, and then you got some really good running backs still in round 3 and 4. So that's where I look to target them, and then just hammer the wide receivers through round 5 to 10. I think there's really good wide receivers still there. So yeah, I'll probably miss out on a lot of AJ Brown shares as well.
Yeah. Sadly, same. So we'll move on to another couple of wide receivers for the Titans. Now we know that Corey Davis obviously is moved on from Tennessee, but are either you two guys interested in Josh Reynolds, who they've got in free agency, or the rookie wide receiver that they signed in Des Fitzpatrick, who either of those guys could potentially be the wide receiver 2 in Tennessee?
All right, I'm going to plant my flag, and there's my imaginary flag, and it's getting planted, and I'm all in on Des Fitzpatrick.
I thought you might say that. I've seen your threads, Jeremy. So.
I like Des Fitzpatrick a lot. He's a similar size to Josh Reynolds, and I think he was just nobody really paid attention to him because he's in Louisville, which was like kind of a little run heavy, but he is very good after the catch, and he does well in contested catch situations, and he looked good at the Senior Bowl, and I think that's why he got overdrafted. And it's crazy. There's some people that literally reached out or anything like that on Twitter, and you saw like the Titans select Des Fitzpatrick, and everybody's like, who? Like, this guy is, I mean, nobody had him this high, and I personally didn't have him that high, but if the NFL likes him, and I liked him beforehand, so I'm just all in. I mean, they ran a lot of 3 personnel or 3 wide receiver sets, so either way, all 3 might be on the field. So, but I think Des Fitzpatrick has the talent to take that wide receiver 2 spot and be close to what Corey Davis was for that offense.
Yeah. Ryan, do you like either of these 2 wide receivers?
No, I like Des Fitzpatrick. I mean, he was kind of like he was one of those guys that was just like a jack of all trades, master of none type wide receiver. He was just nothing that really said, oh, wow, he's really amazing at that. But he was not really poor at anything either in terms of his skill level. I mean, him, Dwayne Eskridge, and Devontae Smith were the only 3 players that have 3 or more catches of 60-plus yards last season. So, I mean, he's got that explosive playmaking ability. He's got that take it to the house type of mentality. And I like the fact that they traded up to get him. I mean, it's in the 4th round, but they still moved up to get him. So they targeted him even after signing Josh Reynolds. So that tells me that maybe they don't have as much confidence in Josh as maybe they initially had, or maybe they just saw him sitting there like, hey, this is a guy that we can go get, and maybe just slot Josh Reynolds into the slot because he can do both of the play on both the inside and outside. So, yeah, I'm with Jeremy on this. I'm not planting my flag on him per se, but I can.
You want to.
Ali, have you got any? I know you quite like Des Fitzpatrick, don't you? I think we mentioned him a little bit when we did his deep dives.
Yes, I think we spoke earlier in the week, didn't we, about Des Fitzpatrick? Was he around 5? He's going. Was it round 5 of the?
I think 4 or 5, yeah.
4 or 5 of the rookie drafts. I think I'm going to take my shot on him there over Josh Reynolds. Just going around later than Reynolds. I'll take the shot at someone that we both like and see that he's got a path to relevancy on the Titans. I'm happy to pay that, take a shot at him, especially in the 20th round, back into the 20th round.
Stealing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I kind of did this with Nico Collins, but I'm going to do it again. Is it down to the situation he's in and the opportunity? If I offered you a 2022 second, if he makes a hot start in 2021, would you move him on for that?
Des Fitzpatrick, probably. I like him, but I mean, you're getting him in the 3rd or 4th, or you're getting him late 3rd, early 4th, possibly 5th. So to swing that to a second, that's just a no-brainer. I mean, yeah, he might be great. I don't see Fitzpatrick ever being great. I just see him being maybe a touch better than Corey Davis over time, maybe. But the offense is just too risky to see a super high upside. You know what I mean? AJ Brown's still there and he's going to see the whole target, but I like Fitzpatrick as that flex guy. So if someone's going to give me a second, sure, they can have him.
Yeah. Ryan, I feel like you're going to agree with that one.
Yeah. I mean, cause like Jeremy said, the rule of thumb is kind of wherever, if you can get another round value at least, then yeah, you take it, and you just kind of, if he pops, then he pops, and you deal with it and move on. But the likelihood of him popping and being worth a second is probably pretty low, seeing as how most analysts had him in the 6th or 7th or even undrafted for the NFL draft. So yeah, I would definitely take a second for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so we've got a few minutes left, so we'll quickly discuss the tight end position, Ali.
Yeah, so Anthony Ferkser, he currently sits atop the tight end depth chart in Tennessee. He's going as the ADP tight end 17 in the middle of the 13th round. So do you like him as a value at that spot?
Yeah, I'm all in on Frisker. I got him last year, and I got him at the end of the year in a tight end premium league, and I'm glad I did as Jonnu Smith moved on. But he's only 26 years old. I like him over like guys like Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, other guys in that same range. I think that he's going to have a good opportunity. They like to target the tight ends in the red zone. If it is the same offense, I should say, if we're basing it off of that, which all we can really do at the moment. So it was like a 50-50 split between wide receivers and tight ends. And the second tight end's Jeff Swami, or Swam, I don't know how you exactly pronounce it. So I feel like Frisker is going to get all those targets, which Jonnu Smith finished tight end 16 last year, which was with 8 touchdowns. So I mean, you could see possibly getting double digit with the lack of no Corey Davis. And if, say, Fitzpatrick doesn't hit and the only other option is Josh Reynolds, I definitely see Tannehill targeting Frisker a lot more than we think. And I mean, he's pretty productive after the catch, too, for a tight end. So it's not like he's Jonnu Smith, but he's not terrible. So,
yeah. Ryan, what's your feelings on Frisker?
I'm fine with him. He's just kind of a guy for me, to be honest with you. But when I was doing research for this, I was kind of surprised at how close him and Jonnu's stats were. I mean, Jonnu had 2 more catches, less than 100 yards more, and obviously he had 7 more touchdowns, and that's what really drove him up the tight end leaderboard there for fantasy points. So, I mean, that offense just doesn't really work through the tight end at all. So, I mean, it's one of those things where they probably run 12 personnel, and they ran 12 personnel 35% of the time. So they use 2 tight ends. They're going to have them on the field, but I feel like they're more of a decoy type of thing. And Jonnu is a lot more athletic, in my opinion, than Frisker is. So he might not get that red zone target share. So he's just kind of a guy, tight end 2, tight end 3 type of tight end for me, just because of. I mean, I think he's getting drafted around guys like Blake Jarwin, who I'd much rather have because of much more prolific offense, and target share should be higher for him. So, yeah, he's just kind of a guy for me, in my opinion. But I can see why people like him just because of Jonnu leaving and having the opportunity at tight end to be a starter.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Why people are high on him, because he's got that opportunity. When we're talking about tight ends, there's not really much to get excited about when you're talking about a tight end. So if you've got one that's got that opportunity, then I can understand why people are high on him. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this section, and having you both on. I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us and giving us your time. Do you quickly want to plug anything or where we can catch you on Twitter before you go?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having us on. I mean, this is a great cause. I'm all into any type of mental health causes or anything like that. My fiance is a mental health counselor, so any of this stuff is great. I was happy to participate. We appreciate you having us on. And for sure, I'm Jeremy. You can find me at PopesFFH on Twitter. You can find my writing at Yards Per, as well as the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And make sure you follow us for our podcast at the FF Playmakers.
Yeah, and Ryan.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you again. You guys, this is awesome. I also want to say what the heck for not giving us a heads up that we weren't going to be following two goats of the fantasy space right now.
I hopped in there, and I was like, "Geez."
Yeah, I saw them, and I was like, "Come on, man! Like, you couldn't give us anybody else, literally anybody else."
Right.
No, it was definitely a great one to watch. But yeah, we just want to say thanks again for coming on. It's been great to chat to you, and I know Jeremy, we've spoke a lot on Twitter and what have you, and supported each other. So it's been great to finally be able to talk to you. So thanks once again for joining us, guys.
Yeah, for sure. And hold up, I know you guys are getting pretty late there.
Yeah, we will do. Thanks a lot, guys. See you later.
Yeah, see you. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Take care.
Right, so that brings us to the end of the third stream. We're moving on now we've made it, Ali. We've got to that fourth quarter. So, just be sure to keep following us. We're going to end this stream and jump on with that other stream. But once again, if you could carry on donating, that'd be great. I know Kev's just messaged us saying we've reached the target, so that's fantastic. But there's still definitely room to keep raising a bit of money for a great charity. So if you want that link, it's www.justgiving.com/fundraising/fantasy wildcard. Thanks once again, and we'll see you on the final stream.